Chapter 41-26. Fengjiu smiled and gestured for him to sit down. After he sat down, she said, "Boss Yu, I am only here to buy medicine. My name is not important. What I want to ask is, will it be cheaper to buy all of your earth spirit grass?" Ha ha ha. The middle-aged man chuckled. He looked at Fengjiu and said, "If it's just 1 or 2 stalks, it's naturally not a problem. However, since you want to buy all 49 stalks that I have in stock, I can naturally give you a discount." He paused and said, "For each stalk, I can give you a discount of 100 gold coins. How about 1,200 gold coins for 1 stalk?" Fengjiu smiled and said, "Boss Yu is indeed a businessman. If you buy this earth spirit grass from the herb gatherers, it would at most cost 200 gold coins. If you buy it from other medicine shops, it would at most cost 250 gold coins. Now you want to sell it for 1,200 gold coins. And you say that this is already considered cheap?" Although the two of them were some distance away from the counter, but to a cultivator, they did not deliberately lower their voices. Naturally, they heard their conversation. At this time, when they heard the price, they were slightly surprised. When Boss Yu heard Fengjiu's words, the smile on his face disappeared. He looked at her with more scrutiny and said, "You are quite familiar with the market. But, you must know that not every medicine shop has this earth spirit grass. My price, even if you say it is expensive, it is also not expensive." Fengjiu didn't care about the money, but she couldn't let others take advantage of her. Hence, she smiled and said, "That is natural. The earth spirit grass in this area have all been cut off. Only you sell it. Boss Yu also knows about medicine. You should know that the longer some medicine is stored, the more its medicinal properties will evaporate. The effect of the medicine will not be obvious. If you don't sell it to me and slowly sell it, who knows when these medicine will become useless." Her voice paused. Seeing that he was about to speak, she raised her hand to stop him. "Of course, if you sell it to me, I won't let Boss Yu suffer a loss. How about 400 gold coins per stalk?" He. "Miss, your price is a little too low." Boss Yu's smile was cold and displeased. Fengjiu sipped his tea, his expression indifferent and casual. "It's fine if Boss Yu doesn't want to sell. But, if you miss out on a customer like me, perhaps after today, you won't be able to sell your 49 stalks of earth spirit grass. Of course, Boss Yu is rich and doesn't lack these. However, if you want to do business for a long time, you still need to have good beer, right?" When the person on the second floor heard this, his expression couldn't help but change as he looked towards Fengjiu. He was somewhat surprised that this girl dared to haggle with the boss of the trading firm and also surprised that this girl knew the price of the earth spirit grass. In fact, they also knew that the trading firm had raised the price. Hence, after comparing the goods, even if the medicine wasn't available in this city, they would ask people to go to other cities to buy it. And the people who could sell the earth spirit grass were mostly those who urgently needed it. Boss Yu looked deeply at Fengjiu, took a deep breath and said, "Okay, I'll do this business with you." Boss Yu is indeed a straightforward person. Fengjiu smiled slightly. When Boss Yu heard this, the corner of his mouth twitched and he was somewhat speechless. Chapter 41-27. Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly surprised. "Didn't she go with you?" She paused, stood up and asked, "What happened?" Ling Shuang's heart sank. "I went with her to buy wine, but there were a lot of people in that shop. A woman holding a child bumped into me, and I was hidden for a while. In just a while, Fei disappeared." Boss Yu was slightly startled when he heard this. He didn't expect this to happen. He looked at the two of them, then thought of the woman from before. He seemed to have thought of something, and his brows furrowed. "Miss, did you offend someone in the city?" A male cultivator said, looking at Fengjiu, and kindly suggested, "If you offended someone, quickly follow this path, maybe you'll find her. Could she have gone back? Look around again, she's just a little girl, maybe she bought something and went back. Another male cultivator also said, telling them to go back and look for her. Fengjiu smiled at the two, I'm still here, she won't go back first. She's probably been caught by someone. If that's the case, then it'll be troublesome. The powers in the city are complicated, it'll be even harder for you two girls to find someone. Do you have any relatives or good friends in the city? Quickly ask them to help you ask around. A middle-aged man in luxurious clothes slowly said, giving them some advice. Thank you. Fengjiu nodded slightly in thanks, then said to Ling Shuang, go back to the inn and tell Du Fan to go out and ask around. If there's any news, come find me here. Yes. Ling Shuang replied, and immediately went downstairs. Fengjiu looked at Boss Yu, wrap up those herbs for me and pay for them. Okay, this way miss. Seeing that she didn't seem to be worried, Boss Yu was a little surprised. He asked her to follow him to the counter on the second floor, and let the shopkeeper take out the herbs for her to count. After both sides paid, he couldn't help but ask, Miss, you don't seem to be worried? Fengjiu smiled, no, I'm quite worried. After all, she's just a little girl, and she's inexperienced. I'm really worried that she'll cause trouble. Hearing this, Boss Yu paused, then asked, Miss, do you have any relatives or friends in the city? No, we're just passing by. We plan to rest here for the night before leaving. Fengjiu said, and checked the herbs, then put them away. Hearing Fengjiu's words, Boss Yu inwardly, and shook his head, the powers in the city is complicated, you don't have any relatives or friends here, and you don't have any relatives or friends. Fengjiu smiled, but didn't say anything. After putting away the herbs, she said, I plan to wait here for my people. Boss Yu, you don't mind if I have another cup of tea, right? Of course, miss, please sit here. Boss Yu said with a smile, and asked someone to bring her another cup of hot tea. The person who bought the herbs on the second floor hadn't left yet. Seeing her sitting there calmly and drinking tea, he couldn't help but be surprised. But he didn't ask too much. On the other side, Du Fan, who was eating and drinking, put down the chopsticks in his hand, and took another sip of wine, thinking, why haven't the mistresses returned yet? Chapter 41-28. What's wrong? Why are you alone? Du Fan stepped forward and asked. Ling Shuang stopped and said, Feifei is missing. Master told me to come back and ask you to find out about the powers in the city, to see who would capture Feifei. Hearing this, Du Fan frowned and said, how could she be missing? Wasn't she with you? I went with her to buy wine, at that time. Ling Shuang told him what happened. Hearing her words, Du Fan thought for a moment and said, I know, then you come with me. We'll meet up with Master in a while. As he said this, he walked back to the inn and called for the waiter. Young master, what orders do you have? The waiter was previously rewarded with a gold coin and was full of joy. Now that he was called for, his face was full of eagerness. Du Fan took out 2 gold coins and placed them on the table, saying, I want to ask you about some things. If you answer well, these 2 gold coins are yours. Hearing this, the waiter's eyes lit up and he quickly asked, what does young master want to ask about? Needless to say, as the waiter of the inn, they were the most well-informed about all kinds of news. There was nothing that they didn't want to talk about. Du Fan and Ling Shuang looked at each other and the fan in his hand opened up. He slowly asked, let me ask you, how many powers are there in the city? Which one is the biggest? What were they mainly doing? Also, have you heard of any foreign beautiful women going missing in the city? On this side, they were asking for information. On the other side, the unconscious Yi Feifei also woke up. However, as soon as she opened her eyes, she saw a sack in front of her and felt that she was being carried by someone. She could also faintly hear voices. She couldn't help but be startled and stare blankly for a moment. Had she been caught? She remembered that when she was buying wine, someone suddenly hugged her from behind and covered her mouth and nose with a piece of cloth. She only knew that in the next moment, she fainted. When she woke up, she was already in the sack. What was this for? Why did he capture her? They had just arrived and had not provoked anyone, nor did they have any enemies. Why would they be targeted? Just as he was thinking about it, he heard voices. What a pity. If it weren't for the fact that the little girl in black doesn't seem to be easy to deal with, I really want to capture her as well. These two people can be sent to the underground black market to be auctioned off. I'm sure we can earn quite a bit of money. You still want to catch the one in black? If I hadn't sent someone to keep that black-clothed girl busy, we might not have been able to catch her. Another voice was heard. Not long after, the sound of the door opening could be heard. Why is it you again? The man who opened the door looked at the sacks on their shoulders, sneered and asked, What did you bring this time? Hee, Grandpa Chow, we've sent another little beauty over. We just got her. She's definitely good stuff. Moreover, she's not from here. All right, come in. We'll have to see the goods first. The man gestured for them to enter. In the sack, Yi Feifei's eyes widened. Could it be that she was caught and sold? She was furious. She rolled her eyes and couldn't help but have an idea. Thus, she secretly adjusted her breathing and gradually calmed herself down. She continued to pretend to be unconscious. Chapter 41-29. When the sack was opened, the sleeping Yi Feifei's delicate and beautiful face was reflected in their eyes. Master Chow sized her up from top to bottom, and the more he looked, the more satisfied he was. Not bad indeed. Rare goods. The man said, then looked at the two men and said, 100 gold coins. Hearing this, the two men smiled embarrassedly and said, Master Chow, you also said that this goods is good. Isn't 100 gold coins too little? As he said this, he stretched out 2 fingers and said, 200 gold coins. You should know that there is a risk in accepting your goods. Moreover, I have to resell them. 150 gold coins, no more. As he said this, he clasped his hands behind his back and said, If you don't want to, you can take them away. You can't enter a place like the black market without connections. Other places also don't dare to accept people like you. Hearing this, the two men hesitated for a moment, then finally clenched their teeth and said, All right. We'll do as Master Chow says. Fortunately, when they succeeded, they took the Qiankuan pouch and other valuables from the woman. They didn't see what was in the pouch, but they knew that it would be worth some money. Thus, the two sides straightforwardly handed over the money and the woman. Then, the two men took the gold coins and left. Master Chow clapped his hands, and in the next moment, 2 men in black appeared. Go, send the woman to the black market to Steward Chow. Yes. The 2 men in black responded, then put the woman back into the sack and took her away. Yi Feifei was once again sent to the underground black market. She only felt that the yellow bile in her stomach was about to be shaken out. It wasn't until she was sent to a room in the underground black market that she heard the person outside say that 2 servant girls were going to be sent over to help her wash up that she opened her eyes. Be careful and watch carefully. This goods will be auctioned tonight. The people outside said, leaving behind 2 guards to guard the door. She carefully peeked through the slit in the window and saw that there were 2 guards outside the door. Further away, there were more guards. Looking at the tall and sturdy bodies of the guards, she knew that if she went out, she would definitely be caught. Thus, she quietly went back to the room to take a look. Seeing that there was no place to escape, she finally thought about it and gave the hair ornaments on her head and the Qiankuan pouch on her waist. However, the dagger hidden in her boots was still there, and the inconspicuous spatial ring on her finger was also there. However, when she looked at her finger that was wearing the spatial ring, those people must have wanted to take her ring when she was unconscious, but they couldn't. She put. You two go in and change her into this set of clothes. Help her wash up and serve her well. Yes. As soon as the voice from outside fell, the door was pushed open. Two women walked in with clothes in their hands. After glancing at Yi Feifei, they began to prepare hot water for his bath. When they were done, they stepped forward and said coldly, "Don't even think about escaping. Once you enter, you won't be able to escape." Chapter 41:30. If I can't beat you, don't tell me I can't use my brain. She sneered and hurriedly took off one of the women's clothes and put it on herself. Then, she dragged the two women behind the screen. After a simple treatment, she retouched her face a little. Her thick eyebrows and freckles greatly reduced her beauty. After finishing, she took a deep breath and tied the tag on one of the women's waist. Just as she was about to walk out, she paused and thought for a moment. Then, she walked back and tied one of the women up. She stuffed her mouth and moved her into the bathtub. After sealing her acupoints, she took the other woman's hairpin and pierced two of her acupoints. Seeing that the woman had woken up, she smiled and made a gesture to keep quiet. She watched as the woman's legs twitched in the water and kicked the water. When the water splashed, she walked out. "I forgot to take some things. I'll go back and get them. You guys keep watch and don't let anyone in. That lady is bathing inside." She lowered her head slightly and said as she walked out casually. The two guards wanted to ask why she was alone, but when they heard her say that and the sound of bathing water coming from the room, they didn't ask. Yi Feifei walked out of their line of sight. Once she was out of their sight, she walked around in a circle. As she didn't know the way, she walked around for a while before she found the back door. Then, she quietly opened the back door and left. When she was outside, she gently exhaled and patted her chest, saying, "That scared me to death. I thought I'd be discovered." She took off her clothes and put on her own clothes. She wanted to go back to look for her master and the others. However, just as she was about to leave, a middle-aged man appeared out of nowhere and blocked her way. "You have some skills. Unfortunately, this is the underground black market. No one has ever been able to escape from here," the middle-aged man said, his voice cold and emotionless. Yi Feifei's heart thumped. She looked at the middle-aged man and wanted to run away. Who knew that the other party's strength was much higher than hers? She barely moved and was caught in the next moment. Hiss. Ah. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Her hands were forcefully twisted behind her back and her body was pressed forward. The tendons in her hands seemed to be taut and the pain made her unable to move. However, she didn't expect that in the next moment, an intense pain would hit her. Crack. Her arm was forcibly twisted, and the bones cracked. She screamed, and cold sweat seeped out of her forehead. Her face also became pale. "This is a lesson for you. I'll let you know what this place is." The middle-aged man's gloomy voice sounded. He did not show any mercy as he twisted her hand and dragged her inside. At the same time, he said, "If you dare to escape again, I'll break your legs." Yi Feifei bit her lips and said word by word, "You caught me and broke my hand. You will regret it. That's what all the goods that enter this place say. Last time, the goods were like that. Originally, they could have been sold in perfect condition, but in the end, their hands and feet were chopped off and fed to the dire beasts. If you don't want to experience that kind of undying death, you'd better obediently become a good." The middle-aged man's cold and sinister voice was filled with bloodthirsty killing intent. He brought Yi Feifei in and handed her over to two men in black. "Look after her. If she escapes again, all of you will be punished." Chapter 41:31. For an underground black market to be able to establish itself as the #1 power in this city, it naturally had its own strengths. Once inside, with Yi Feifei's strength, how could he escape so easily? It had to be said that she was still inexperienced, and there were many things that she hadn't seen through yet. If it was Fengjiu, he naturally wouldn't have been captured. After all, their strengths and experiences were different, and Fengjiu's thoughts and schemes were far superior to Yi Feifei's. It could be said that it was expected that she would be captured. On the other side, Du Fan and Ling Shuang found out about the various powers in the city, as well as some ruffians and rogue cultivators, from the waiter. After some investigation, they locked their eyes on a few groups of people. The two of them searched all over the city, and only when the sky gradually darkened did they arrive at the place where the last group of people lived. Looking at the house in front of them, the two of them looked at each other and jumped in. They heard the sound of drinking and laughing coming from inside. What a pity, if it wasn't for that beauty in black who didn't look easy to deal with, we would have caught her and sold her as well. Our brothers would have probably made twice as much money. It's okay, next time we see if there's any good stuff, it's the same. Let me tell you, when picking these little beauties, it's best to pick them from outside the city. Only when they come here will we be unable to find them. Even if we sell them, they won't be able to find anything. This kind of work is the best, and there's no numbing. Before he could finish speaking, a long sword was placed on his neck. The cold light and the bloodthirsty aura made the man break out in cold sweat, and he didn't dare to move an inch. You sold him out. Where did they go? Du Fan asked, staring coldly at the man. Ling Shuang held his sword against the man. The sharp blade moved slightly, and a trace of blood seeped out. The man was so scared that his face turned pale. Spare me, spare me, spare me, I don't know what you're talking about. You're not talking. Du Fan opened the fan in his hand with a swish, and a sharp blade emerged from the top of the fan, which was a ghastly sight. When the other people who were drinking with him saw this, they were frightened to the point of wanting to flee. Unexpectedly, as soon as they moved, they were suppressed by a powerful pressure, to the extent that the blood and qi in their bodies were in disorder, their ears were ringing, their heads were splitting, and blood even flowed out from their mouths. For a time, miserable cries rang out continuously. Ah! I'll talk. Sold to the underground black market. Another man couldn't help but shout. Hearing the other person speak, the man held by Ling Shuang's sword hurriedly said with a trembling voice, yes, it was sold to the underground black market. Hearing this, Du Fan and Ling Shuang looked at each other. In the next moment, Ling Shuang pulled out the sword in his hand. Sword qi shot out and instantly slit the man's throat. Du Fan waved the fan in his hand and flew out in a circle. The sharp blade slit the men's necks, and one by one, they fell down. Let's talk to the master first, then go to the underground black market. Du Fan said. Just as he was about to turn and leave, he caught a glimpse of Yi Feifei's qianquan bag from the waist of one of the men. He immediately took the qianquan bag and left with Ling Shuang. Chapter 41-32. Boss Yu looked at Fengjiu, who was resting with her eyes closed. He exchanged glances with the customers on the second floor. He wanted to ask her about it, but he felt that it was too abrupt. If he didn't ask, how long would she stay here? While thinking about it, Fengjiu suddenly opened her eyes. Seeing her suddenly open her eyes, Boss Yu, who was sitting next to her and staring at her, couldn't help but be startled. Miss, your men haven't come back for a long time. Did they not get any news? He asked carefully. Fengjiu looked at the window on the second floor. She looked at the darkening sky and said, it's been a while, but they should be here soon. As she said that, she saw Du Fan and Ling Shuang coming up from the first floor. Master. The two of them bowed respectfully. How is it? Fengjiu asked. She stood up and straightened her red dress. I found them. They're in the underground black market. As Du Fan didn't lower his voice, the people on the second floor all heard him. They had already guessed this result, so they weren't surprised. People who enter the underground black market can't come back unless they pay a lot of money, Boss Yu said. He looked at Fengjiu and shook his head and sighed. Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. Underground black market? Hearing this name, she thought of the black market that had helped her in the beginning. She couldn't help but reveal a smile as she slowly said, I want to see what kind of place it is. How dare it be called a black market? As she spoke, she looked at the two and said, lead the way. They walked to the first floor, but stopped after 2 steps. They turned back and said, Boss Yu, sorry to disturb you today. Boss Yu walked forward and said, let me see you out. Please. Therefore, she followed them down the stairs. When she reached the first floor, she saw that they were about to leave. She couldn't help but remind them, Miss, this underground black market is not to be trifled with. It's really not to be trifled with. You'd better not go in. Otherwise, I'm afraid that you won't be able to come out once you enter. Fengjiu smiled and said, thank you. Then she walked away. The customers on the second floor followed them down. Seeing them leave, a cultivator couldn't help but say, they want to go to the black market with just 3 people. I'm afraid they'll be killed before they even enter the black market. I have a medicine to buy from the black market, a cultivator said and cupped his hands to old Shi and the others. I'll take my leave now. Seeing the cultivator leave in a hurry, one of them sneered, he's going to watch the show, right? What kind of commotion could those 3 people cause? Who knows, they might be annihilated by the black market experts in no time. What show can there be? Not to mention the cultivators below, there are 4 elders in charge of the black market. Who dares to go there and watch the show? What's more, do you think the underground black market is something you can watch casually? Another person said. He flicked his sleeves and walked away. As he walked, he shook his head and said, what a pity. I'm afraid that such a beautiful woman will not be able to return from this trip. Fengjiu's group headed towards the black market. Fengjiu stopped and said to Ling Shuang, go in through the back door and find Feifei first. Chapter 41-33. Fengjiu and Du Fan entered through the main entrance and headed towards the black market. The reason why this underground black market was called an underground black market was because there were things that were not available in the outside world. Moreover, the origins of these things were mostly obtained through unscrupulous means. The transactions here were black-on-black transactions. As long as you had money, you could buy anything you wanted in this underground black market, including slaves, women, life-saving elixirs, and rare treasures. After paying the entrance fee, the 2 of them walked in. Because of Fengjiu's outstanding appearance and her dazzling red clothes, she looked so stunning that many people couldn't help but stop and size her up. There were even some reckless people who stepped forward and spoke frivolously. Yo, where did this little beauty come from? His looks are really tempting. A man dressed in luxurious clothes with evil eyes walked forward and reached out his hand to lift Fengjiu's chin. However, in the next moment, a blood-curdling scream was heard. Hiss! The man in luxurious clothes with evil eyes instantly let out a blood-curdling scream. Everyone only saw that his outstretched hand had been cut off from the wrist, not to mention the fingers. The bloody severed hand fell to the ground. He covered the bleeding wound with a pale face as he screamed and retreated, looking at Du Fan in horror. Du Fan's mouth twitched. The fan in his hand was still fanning at a moderate pace. No one could have imagined that such a seemingly gentle and elegant young master, with such an ordinary-looking fan, could actually cut off the man's wrist without even blinking. It was so fast that no one could clearly see how he did it. For a moment, the people who were staring and sizing up Fengjiu immediately put away their thoughts. Only shock and horror were left in their hearts. A person who could make a move in an instant and was so fast that they couldn't see it was definitely not someone to be trifled with. Such a person, even if he had a smile on his face and looked like a gentle and noble young master, his experience told them that this person was very dangerous. What's going on? What's going on? A manager brought the guards over. When he saw the severed hand and blood on the ground, his eyes flashed. He looked around and finally, a guard came forward and whispered a few words in his ear. Then, the manager's gaze fell on Fengjiu and Du Fan. Clean up the ground. The manager ordered, waving his hand to have someone clean up the ground. He also had someone bring the man whose hand had been cut off away. Then, he smiled to the crowd and said, all right. Everyone, disperse. Don't crowd around here. The transaction is about to begin. Let's quickly enter the venue. After the crowd gradually dispersed, the manager walked in front of Fengjiu with one hand behind his back. He smiled and said, I don't care where you're from, nor do I care what abilities you have, but now that you've entered this place, no matter if you're a dragon or a tiger, you'll have to submit to me. Otherwise, we'll let you have a taste of our black market strength. Then, without waiting for them to speak, he turned and left. Fengjiu saw this and the corners of his lips curled up, a small black market with such a big attitude. Chapter 41-34. On the other side, Leng Shuang quietly snuck in from the back. She concealed her presence and used the cover of the night to explore the area. She hid in a tree and glanced down. She sensed that in addition to the guards in the open, there were also shadow guards in the dark. Moreover, there was a spiritual power in the air. In other words, even if there was no one guarding the area, the person who set up the spiritual power would know as long as there was even the slightest movement. Of course, this spiritual power was only effective against people who were weaker than him. For people like her who were stronger than him, the spiritual power would not be able to detect her existence. She glanced down and after sizing up the area, she leaped down. Instead of searching around aimlessly, it was better to capture someone and ask. She immediately made up her mind and rushed down. She grabbed a guard from behind and dragged him to the rockery. She lowered her voice and said coldly, "Speak, where is the girl who was just sent here today?" I don't know." The guard said as he reached down. When he was about to make a move, Leng Shuang realized what he was trying to do and broke his neck. She went out and dragged another one back. He still did not know. When she dragged the third one back, the guard said in a trembling voice, "I know, don't kill me, don't kill me." "Speak, where is she?" Leng Shuang asked as she grabbed the guard's throat. "She escaped today and was captured and locked in the woodshed." The guard fell to the ground and was lifted up by the neck. "How do I get to the woodshed?" Leng Shuang asked. After learning the way from the guard, she killed him. When Leng Shuang arrived at the woodshed, Yi Feifei was leaning against the corner of the wall. Her face was pale and she was holding her hand. Seeing this, she reached out and flicked her hand. 2 streams of air hit the 2 guards and she jumped in from behind. "Feifei." She called and raised her hand to set up a soundproof barrier. Yi Feifei, who was sitting in a daze, saw Leng Shuang suddenly appear. Her eyes reddened. "Leng Shuang, you came to save me?" As soon as her voice fell, she quickly stood up. "Yes, Master and Du Fan are here too." As she spoke, she saw her hand hanging limply. She couldn't help but frown and ask, "What's wrong with your hand?" "I wanted to escape today, but I was caught. That person twisted my hand and it's still broken. It hurts when I move." She continued, "They want to sell me, saying I'm the goods for tonight's trade. I can't escape. They're all stronger than me, All right, stop talking." Leng Shuang raised her hand to stop her and said, "I'll take you to see Master." As she spoke, she took her uninjured hand, removed the soundproof enchantment, and walked out. "Who dares to break into the black market?" A deep and gloomy voice was heard. Then, a wind blade attacked from the front. Leng Shuang held Yi Feifei with one hand and helped her avoid the attack. He pushed her to the side and said, "Wait for me." As soon as he said this, the sword in his hand was drawn. He rushed forward at an extremely fast speed and hit the opponent's fatal spot. He was so fast that there was almost no pause. Yes. Chapter 41-35. Chief Guard. When the guards saw Ling Xuang kill their chief guard, they couldn't help but exclaim in shock. However, they didn't dare to step forward and instead retreated. If even their chief guard couldn't defeat this woman in black, wouldn't they be courting death if they went forward? Quickly report this to the protector elder. In the midst of the chaos, one of the guards shouted and quickly pushed the guard beside him to report. The long sword in Ling Xuang's hand was pointed diagonally at the ground. Sharp and powerful sword chi emanated from the blade of the sword. She coldly glanced at the guards who were blocking her way. With a twist of the sword in her hand, a black figure dashed out in the next instant. The sharp sword chi also attacked the guards. A chilling murderous aura instantly filled the air, causing everyone to shiver. Whoosh! Whoosh! Clang! Hiss! Let's go! Ling Xuang turned around and looked at Yi Feifei, who was standing to the side in a daze. Oh! Yi Feifei recovered from her shock. This was the first time she had seen such a bloody scene, and it was done by Ling Xuang. For a moment, the shock in her heart was self-evident. Seeing Ling Xuang in action with her own eyes made her realize how strong and powerful she was. Seeing it with her own eyes was even more shocking than hearing it from others. You broke into my black market and killed my guards, and you want to leave just like that? A gloomy and ruthless voice sounded. At the same time, the air was filled with an oppressive aura. Visible spiritual energy surged in the air, causing Yi Feifei's blood to churn. She felt as if a huge rock was pressing on her chest, making it difficult for her to breathe. Pooh! Her blood surged, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She couldn't withstand the powerful pressure and fainted. Feifei. Ling Xuang turned around and immediately reached out to support her. His cold eyes swept across the surroundings, but he didn't see anyone. He only heard voices. Immediately, he coldly shouted, "Coward! Come out and face your death." Ha! How arrogant! As soon as the cold voice came out, a figure rushed out like a ghost. With a flip of his hand, a destructive flow of spirit energy shot towards Ling Xuang. This speed was so fast that it could be called ghostly speed. If it was anyone else, they probably wouldn't be able to survive this palm strike. However, he was unlucky to have met Ling Xuang, who was by Fengjiu's side. Ling Xuang was someone who was personally trained by Fengjiu. Ling Xuang's strength was far from ordinary experts. When the destructive flow of spirit energy mixed with the aura of death hit them, Ling Xuang held Yi Feifei's waist with one hand and let her lean on him. He pointed his sword to the ground and stared coldly in front of him. Ling Xuang could clearly see the figure rushing towards them at an extremely fast speed in the eyes of others. She could even see the speed of the opponent's attack. Ling Xuang took Yi Feifei and quickly avoided the opponent's attack. At the same time, she raised her sword and a sword chi shot out from her hand and fiercely attacked the figure. Whoosh! Hiss! Chapter 41-36. His robes were torn, and his flesh stung. Fresh blood seeped out. His face darkened, and his entire body exuded a bloodthirsty killing intent. His hands under his sleeves were clenched into fists. He stared at the woman in black who was supporting the other woman. Finally, he let out a low chuckle, which eventually turned into a hearty laugh. It's been a long time since anyone has been able to hurt me. You're very powerful. He stared at Ling Xuang, his eyes filled with bloodlust and madness. If you were to escape by yourself, it wouldn't be difficult with your strength. However, if you want to escape with the woman who was knocked out by the pressure, then no one will be able to escape. As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Shuang, who was on guard, sensed two more figures walking out from behind her. She turned slightly and glanced at them from the corner of her eyes. The two half-hidden figures fell into her sight. Peak mid-god cultivators. However, if the three of them attacked her together, it would be troublesome. She was worried that she wouldn't be able to protect Yi Feifei and let her get hurt. Since that was the case, she could only take Yi Feifei to the auction house in front. She made up her mind. Spiritual energy surged from her body, and the energy from her sword shot towards the person in front of her. At the same time, she pushed off with the tip of her foot and took Yi Feifei with her. The person dodged Ling Shuang's attack, and when he looked again, he saw her taking Yi Feifei into the air and escaping by stepping on the roof. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes and coldly shout, "Catch her." There was no need for him to open his mouth. As soon as Ling Shuang fled with Yi Feifei, the two people in the dark had already quickly chased after them. However, what they did not expect was that the other party was actually faster than them even though they were carrying another person. Because they didn't expect her to run towards the black market's auction house, they didn't guard that direction. After all, they had hundreds of cultivators guarding the auction house. Wouldn't she be walking right into a trap if she went there? Yet, she still took Yi Feifei in that direction. Is she a cornered dog jumping over a wall? Our auction house is right in front of us. There are over 100 guards and 50 hidden guards. Elder Yuan is also there. If she escapes there, wouldn't she be walking right into a trap? The two of them chased after Ling Shuang. Because they saw that she was heading in the direction of the auction house, the two of them looked at each other and slowed down. They were a little surprised and started chatting. However, this woman's strength seems to be above ours. If she hadn't brought that unconscious woman with her, we probably wouldn't have been her match. Once an expert made a move, the truth would be revealed. She was able to injure a peak high god with a single move, so there was no need to doubt her strength. However, for a mere woman to be more powerful than them, this was a little unbelievable. What else is there to say? If we don't catch up, she will take advantage of the chaos and escape. The person who caught up saw that the two of them were still chatting and immediately looked at them with displeasure. Hearing this, one of them put on a fake smile and said, "Ha! Brother Chow, even you are no match for her. What's so strange about us not being able to catch up to her? Moreover, Elder Yuan is guarding the auction house. Even if we don't do anything, Elder Yuan will capture her for breaking into the auction house. She won't be able to escape." It wasn't a matter of a day or two that they didn't get along well. Seeing that they were still arguing at this time, the one surnamed Chow snorted coldly and quickly rushed forward with a flick of his sleeve. Chapter 41-37. At the front of the auction hall, a middle-aged man on the stage was giving his opening speech. The people sitting below the stage were also discussing what good items would be auctioned this time and what they wanted to buy. In a corner of the hall, Fengjiu and Du Fan were sitting side by side. They did not listen to the middle-aged man's opening speech, nor did they listen to his introduction of what items would be auctioned this time. Under the dim lighting, they were sizing up the guards and secret guards in the hall, as well as the powerful person hiding in the dark. "Master, we can almost ignore the rest, but the person sitting on the second floor is very strong. In my opinion, he should be a mid-level high god," Du Fan said to Fengjiu telepathically. After all, there were people sitting on the left, right, front, and back, and all of them were cultivators with high cultivation. If they spoke, it would naturally fall into their ears. "Yes, I didn't expect a mid-level high god to be in charge of a black market in the city." Fengjiu smiled and replied with his divine sense. "Ling Shuang has been there for a while. I don't know if there will be any accidents." Du Fan was a little worried. With Ling Shuang's ability, he will find her. If not for the fact that they were worried that they would not be able to make a move before they found Yi Feifei and ensured that she was safe, they could directly attack her. However, If they did that, Yi Feifei would become a threat in their hands. If the other party wanted to kill her, there was no guarantee that there would not be any accidents. Right now, they could only wait here. When Ling Shuang found Yi Feifei, they would settle the score with her together. Well, let's officially start tonight's auction. The first item on the stage is... Before the middle-aged man could finish his sentence, he was shocked by the wind from a palm strike. Bang! At the same time, a woman in black rushed out from behind with another woman. Her speed was so fast that a gust of wind was stirred up around her. Catch them. Don't let them escape. Close the door. Quick. Close the door. Angry shouts could be heard from behind, and the messy footsteps of the guards could be heard. They quickly spread to the auction house and surrounded the entire auction house. The man who had been injured by Ling Shuang glared at Ling Shuang viciously. He watched as Ling Shuang brought the woman away, but when they were about to leave the auction stage, she stopped and turned around. A sinister smile appeared on his face. I told you, you can't escape. Ling Shuang looked at him. Here, looking at the auction hall surrounded by guards and secret guards, the corners of her mouth curled up imperceptibly, revealing a hint of a smile. She did not have to worry about falling into the enemy's hands, because her master. Chapter 41-38. Bang! Gotcha. A powerful pressure that could be seen with the naked eye attacked the man at a speed that was too fast for the ears to cover. In an instant, the man was pushed back several meters until he hit the wall behind him. However, this blow was not light. Even though the man was one of the four elders, his face was now pale. The blood in his body was in a mess, and blood was spilling out of his mouth. His legs were trembling, and he could not even stand. He could only use his hand to support himself against the wall that cracked because of the impact to prevent himself from falling to the ground. Pfft! The blood spilling out of his mouth could not stop the blood in his body from surging. He spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot, and his whole body trembled as he fell to the ground. Hiss! The people who saw this scene could not help but gasp. The cultivators who were sitting below the stage all stood up abruptly, and their eyes widened as they watched the scene on the stage. That was one of the four elders of the black market, and he was actually injured by a pretty boy with a fan. After Du Fan pushed the man back, he looked at Ling Shuang and asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." However, Feifei's arm was broken by them, and she fainted because of their pressure. Ling Shuang said as he looked coldly at the man who had fallen to the stage. Hearing Ling Shuang's words, Du Fan noticed that one of Yi Feifei's arms was not quite right. His gaze turned cold when he saw her hand and her pale face. He looked away and looked at the man who had fallen to the ground. In the next moment, his figure flashed out, and the sharp blade of the fan in his hand was aimed at the man's throat. "Those who hurt us, die. Don't be presumptuous." An aged and deep voice suddenly resounded in the auction house. The powerful pressure contained within the voice caused the hearts of the crowd to tremble. They raised their heads to look and saw a figure dashing out of nowhere. A palm wind condensed into a palm and slammed towards the man holding the fan on the stage. Bang! Ah! In that instant, everyone saw the man with the fan swinging the fan towards the elder who was sitting on the ground with his eyes wide open in shock, while his other hand quickly gathered a palm wind to meet the palm of the elder who had appeared out of nowhere. The two palms collided, and the two powerful palms collided with a bang. The old man was no match for the old man, and he staggered back and fell to the ground. At that moment, the fan in the man's hand had already slit the throat of the elder who had fallen to the ground. A mournful and unwilling scream echoed in the auction house. Shortly after, blood spurted out from the slit throat and splattered all over the ground. Ah! The cultivators below the stage originally wanted to buy some things, but they didn't expect to see such a bloody scene. Especially when the one who was killed was an elder of the black market. This made them panic. Afraid that they would be implicated, they all rushed to the door. Hurry up and leave. Hurry up and leave. Open the door. However, the door was closed, not only on the inside, but also on the outside. Therefore, they couldn't escape at all. This was originally to prevent Ling Shuang and the others from escaping, but they didn't expect that in the end, their escape route would be blocked as well. The two elders who were chasing from behind the stage couldn't help but gasp when they saw the elder who had already died leaning against the wall with his eyes wide open and his face full of unwillingness and horror. Chapter 41-39. They looked at Du Fan and Ling Shuang in front of them in shock. After being stunned for a while, they suddenly regained their senses and shouted, "How dare you kill an elder of the black market? You guys, how dare you?" The old man who had been pushed back stood aside with an ashen face. His hands under his sleeves were tightly clenched into fists, and his heart was filled with anger. In front of so many people, he had been pushed back by a member of the younger generation. Furthermore, the other party had killed an elder of the black market. He had wanted to save someone, but he had been unable to do so and could only watch helplessly as the elder was killed in front of him. This was not only because the other party had died, but also because the elder had been killed in front of him. It was like a slap to his face, making him feel very embarrassed. "I don't care how high your cultivation level is. Today, all of you will die here." As the old man spoke, his gloomy voice carried a hint of viciousness. In the next moment, he made his move, gathering wind in his palm and attacking Du Fan. His move was vicious and carried a terrifying killing intent. "Kill them." As the old man made his move, he glanced coldly at the two elders standing behind him. His meaning was that he would deal with Du Fan, and the two elders would deal with Ling Shuang. As the old man's voice fell, the two elders regained their senses and attacked Ling Shuang, as well as Yi Feifei, who was being supported by her. However, just as the two of them rushed forward, Fengjiu, who was sitting in the corner below the stage, called out softly, "Cloud-devouring beasts." Two rays of light flashed out, and the two ferocious cloud-devouring beasts roared angrily. They leapt towards the stage and raised their sharp claws, carrying the coercion of a sacred beast as they attacked the two elders. Roar! Roar! The two cloud-devouring beasts roared angrily. Their roars were loud and clear, carrying a powerful coercion that shook the eardrums of the crowd. Their powerful and robust physiques shocked the crowd in the auction house, and they could not help but cry out in alarm. Heavens! That's a cloud-devouring beast. That's a sacred beast-level cloud-devouring beast. Hiss! Two cloud-devouring beasts have appeared at once. Where did they come from? When the people who were rushing towards the auction house saw the two cloud-devouring beasts leaping onto the auction stage, their eyes widened in shock and disbelief. They might still see divine beasts, but sacred beasts were extremely rare. And here, there were actually two of them. After recovering from their shock, some of the more attentive people couldn't help but glance at the corner of the auction house. When they saw the red-clothed lady slowly standing up from her seat, their hearts couldn't help but stagnate. The man holding the fan was the woman's attendant, and the two cloud-devouring beasts seemed to have appeared after the woman called out. She had such a powerful servant and two powerful cloud-swallowing beasts protecting her. Who was this woman? Ah! The two elders on the stage did not expect two ferocious beasts to pounce towards them. They did not have time to withdraw their attacks, nor did they have time to retreat. They could only see the two cloud-devouring beasts roaring angrily and clawing at them with their sharp claws. Instantly, the sound of their robes being torn, accompanied by the sound of flesh being cut, entered their ears. The pain that came from their bodies made them cry out in agony. They quickly retreated and looked in horror at the two cloud-devouring beasts that had stopped in front of the woman in black. Chapter 41-40. In that split second of distraction, a powerful gust of wind hit his chest and sent him flying back several meters. He snapped back to his senses and saw that the man holding the fan was staring at him coldly. The man's eyes were filled with contempt and indifference. He felt humiliated and his chi and blood surged, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Whoever kills them will be heavily rewarded by the black market. In the future, they will be honored guests of the black market. The old man shouted in a low voice and looked at the crowd who had retreated to the entrance of the auction house. There were all sorts of people amongst these people, and there were naturally many experts amongst them. However, they had all chosen to stand by and watch at this moment. If they were to lend a hand, then how could a mere few people and 2 cloud-devouring divine beasts be a match for them? Because of the old man's words, the crowd who had retreated could not help but feel tempted. If they could become honored guests of the black market, it would be a good thing. Furthermore, the black market would owe them a favor. If anything happened in the future, the black market would also help them. Thinking of this, some people clenched their fists and prepared to step forward. However, at that moment, they saw the woman in red slowly walk forward. Her gentle voice echoed in everyone's ears. Today, none of the people in charge of the black market will survive. If anyone is not afraid of death, feel free to step forward. I don't mind sending him on his way. The voice was slow and indifferent. It was so calm that there was no fluctuation in it. It was as if she was just saying the most ordinary words. However, it was this woman in red slow words that made those who wanted to take a step forward stop in their tracks. For some reason, when the voice was heard, it was so gentle but it exploded in their hearts like thunder. They trembled with fear and did not dare to take the risk. Who are you people? The old man shouted in a low voice. Fengjiu walked to the front. Leng Shuang carried the unconscious Yi Feifei and leaped down to Fengjiu's side. Looking at Yi Feifei's limp hand, Fengjiu reached out and touched it. Her eyes turned cold. Her hand had been twisted and broken, and even the bones had been displaced. This kind of twist was not as simple as breaking the bones. If she had not grasped the technique well during the treatment, and the bones were not connected properly, her hand might have been slightly twisted because of the bones in the future, and her flexibility would not be as natural as before. How dare you touch my people without knowing who we are? Fengjiu's voice had turned cold. She looked up at the old man and sneered. She said word by word, the price for touching my people is death. Just as Fengjiu finished speaking, Du Fan attacked the old man. Not to mention that his master had already given the order to kill, even if he hadn't, he would still kill these people. Du Fan's attack changed, and he released his spiritual energy and pressure. As soon as he released his pressure, the old man's face turned pale, and his body trembled slightly. This person's strength was so strong. If it was the previous attack, he could still barely block it. But now that Du Fan's attack had changed, he did not even have the chance to fight back. This was because his entire person was suppressed by a strong force. Even if it was only for a moment, this moment was enough to determine his life and death. Xiao. Ah. Chapter 41-41. Hiss. Seeing this scene, the people at the main entrance of the auction house sucked in a breath of cold air, their faces turning pale. Their bodies involuntarily shrank back, trying to hide their presence. Another elder had died. And it was the head of the 4 great elders. This was really going to be a big deal. Among the cultivators who were shrinking back towards the main entrance of the auction house, there were 1 or 2 who had seen Fengjiu and the rest on the 2nd floor of the medicinal herbs company. Seeing this scene, they were so shocked that they were dumbfounded, unable to speak for a long while. Who could tell them that what they saw was not real? Just the few of them, actually killed 2 elders of the black market, and even had 2 sacred beasts following them. This was simply too heaven-defying. They had originally thought that the girl who had been sold to the black market would at most be auctioned off, and if they wanted to get her back, they could only bid for her at a high price. Who would have thought that these 2 or 3 people would actually use such a simple and crude method to directly attack the black market, and the people of the black market were actually not their match? Who could tell them, where on earth did these abnormally powerful people come from? Just as they were in a daze, Du Fan shattered the inner elixir of the elder, and his entire body fell backwards, his body twitching a few times, blood flowing out of his mouth, as he fell into a pool of blood and breathed his last breath. After killing the elder, Du Fan turned to look at the 2 people who were being attacked by the cloud-swallowing beast. The 2 of them were already covered with cuts and bruises, and as they dodged the attacks of the cloud-swallowing beast, they looked at the dead elder on the ground. Because of the shock and fear in their hearts, they revealed many flaws in their defenses. Hence, the cloud-swallowing beast raised its sharp claws and tore off one of the people's arms. Hiss! A shrill sound rang out, and the thick smell of blood filled the air. One of them screamed, his face pale as he gritted his teeth and fled backwards. Seeing this, the other person also sent out a palm strike to block the cloud-swallowing beast's pursuit, and fled backwards as well. As for the guards and shadow guards in the open and in the dark, they had already quietly dispersed. Even the elders were not their match. How would they dare to send themselves to their doorstep to seek death? In the end, they still valued their own lives more. "Master, wait here," Du Fan said, and his figure flashed, chasing after the 2 people. If the guards and secret guards escaped, then so be it. But these 4 elders and the steward must die. This black market must disappear from the city tonight. "Leng Shuang, help her sit here," Fengjiu said, motioning for her to help Yi Feifei sit down. Yes, Leng Shuang responded and helped Yi Feifei to her seat while he supported her from the side. Fengjiu took out a medicinal pill and stuffed it into her mouth, then pinched her Renzhong point. Not long after, he saw Yi Feifei slowly wake up. "Master?" Yi Feifei slowly recovered. He felt a warmth in his chest, as if something was flowing. It was very comfortable. The pain also disappeared. However, when he woke up, the pain in his arm gradually became clearer. Chapter 41-42. Wrapping the cloth around her neck and holding her arms in front of her chest, he said, "That's all for now. Don't move it." "Thank you, Master." Yi Feifei looked at Fengjiu and lowered her head, saying softly, "Master, I've caused trouble for you." Fengjiu smiled, not minding it. "I can go anywhere, but I can't avoid trouble. Today's matter is just a small matter. In the future, when you follow me for a long time, you will know that sometimes, even if we don't look for trouble, trouble will come knocking on our door." While they were talking in front, the cultivators who had retreated to the door were dumbfounded. They were actually chatting here. Didn't they see the bloody corpses on the stage? Didn't they see the 2 cloud-swallowing beasts sitting on the stage, eyeing them covetously? Not long after, Du Fan came back, holding one of the elders in his hand. But at this time, he was covered in injuries and his face was pale. He brought him in front of Fengjiu, saying, "Master, I'll keep this person, I plan to let him bring us to open the black market storehouse." Fengjiu raised her eyebrows, saying, "You go with him." Fengjiu indicated that she did not plan to go herself. "Yes." Du Fan replied, seeing that she did not object, he left with the elder. A black market that was about to disappear, they naturally had to take the things inside, otherwise, wouldn't it be convenient for others? Those who heard their words all looked at each other, some were tempted, but the moment they thought about it, they dismissed it. These few people were very strong, if they did not make a move, they would be fine, but once they made a move, they could kill the other party. Such opponents were too scary, they did not dare to take the risk, especially when they did not even know their origins. After Du Fan left, Fengjiu looked around, seeing that the guards and shadow guards had already fled, and those who came to participate in the auction had retreated to the main door. She raised her eyebrows and glanced at them, saying, "Why aren't you leaving? What are you standing there for?" Hearing this, they were stunned and somewhat in disbelief. We can leave. Fengjiu smiled and said, I don't care who you are. Since you are not my enemy and did not oppose me, you can naturally leave. She paused and looked at the surprised expressions on their faces. She smiled and said, however, you should know what you can say and what you can't say. Hearing this, everyone was shocked and immediately replied, we know. Let's go. She glanced at them indifferently before withdrawing her gaze. With a wave of her sleeve, the two cloud-swallowing beasts returned to her space. Seeing this, those people let out sighs of relief. They looked at each other, then one of them took out a sword and slashed the door open. As soon as the door was opened, everyone rushed out and left the place. After waiting for about half an hour, Du Fan returned, looking at Fengjiu and the rest, saying, Master, I took everything in their storeroom, and also killed that person. None of the people in this black market were good people, who knew how many people who were sold here had died in their hands, or were sold by them. Such people, even if they died 100 times, it would not be enough. Let's go. Fengjiu said, standing up. Chapter 41-43. Yi Feifei glanced at him and nodded, yes, I can. She had injured her hand, not her leg. Furthermore, her master had bandaged it and given her an elixir, so it would not be a problem for her to walk back. I'll support you. Leng Shuang said as he supported her from the side. Thank you. Yi Feifei thanked her as she spoke. She used her strength to support her and followed her master out. They returned to the inn under the cover of the night. After entering the inn, they asked the waiter to bring hot water. Fengjiu asked Leng Shuang to cut off Yi Feifei's sleeve. Because her arm was broken, if she took off her clothes, she would definitely twist her arm again. Therefore, cutting off her sleeve was the most appropriate choice. Hiss! Yi Feifei gasped. Because the bandages that secured her arm were untied, her arm hung down. She broke out in a cold sweat from the pain. Your arm is swollen. Leng Shuang frowned when he saw that Yi Feifei's arm was unbelievably red and swollen. The bone was twisted and shifted. It was not treated in time, so it is natural that it is red and swollen. Fengjiu rolled up her sleeve as he spoke. He looked at Leng Shuang and then at Yi Feifei. Finally, he said, I need to help you reconnect the bone. Leng Shuang alone is not enough. We need Du Fan to come in and help. Yi Feifei was stunned. She gritted her teeth and said, okay. If Fengjiu had been alone, she would not have thought much of exposing her arm. However, since it was Yi Feifei, it was better to let her know first so that she would not feel uncomfortable. I'll call him. As Leng Shuang spoke, she walked out and called Du Fan who was outside. Not long after, the two of them walked in. When Du Fan saw that Yi Feifei was sitting on the chair, her dress was still intact, but one of her arms was exposed without any concealment. The woman's snow-white skin was reflected in his eyes, causing his eyes to flicker slightly. He looked down and saw that her arm was unbelievably red and swollen. He gathered his thoughts and walked forward. Master, what do you need me to do? I need to reconnect Feifei's bone. Stand behind her and hold her upper arm with both hands to prevent her from twisting and struggling from the pain, Fengjiu said and motioned for him to come forward. Yes. Du Fan responded and walked to stand behind Yi Feifei. Since he had to hold her upper arm with both hands, he had to hold her in his arms. Therefore, he reached out and wrapped his arms around her entire body. He held her upper arm with both hands. The man scent assaulted Yi Feifei's nose, causing her ears to turn red. She felt her entire body heating up, and her whole body was uncomfortable. Especially when her bare arms were hugged by his hands, she couldn't help but lower her eyes. She told herself over and over in her heart that Du Fan was helping her with the bone setting. Even if he hugged her like this, it was no big deal. Fengjiu nodded when he saw that Yi Feifei's posture was correct. He carefully lifted Yi Feifei's arm and said to Ling Shuang, hold her here. Yes. Ling Shuang stepped forward and held Yi Feifei's hand as instructed, keeping it straight. Yi Feifei could not help but feel nervous when they held her entire arm. She could not help but grit her teeth when she felt the pain in her arm. She tried her best not to move. Chapter 41-44. Yi Feifei's face grew paler and paler. She didn't make a sound. She only clenched her teeth, afraid that she would cry out if she let go of her hand. Yi Feifei's face grew paler and paler. She didn't make a sound. She only clenched her teeth, afraid that she would cry out if she let go. Because of the fracture of her arm, in addition to the dislocation of the bone, her arm was also red and swollen due to the bleeding and coagulated blood. Feng Jiu helped her set the bone back and carefully touched the bone. After making sure that the bone had been set in its original position, he held her hand with one hand and pulled it slightly to straighten and level her hand. Ling Shuang, hold here and don't move. Don't pull your arm. Just hold it like this and keep it flat. Feng Jiu instructed and let Ling Shuang take over her hand. Ling Shuang responded and did as she said. He watched as his master carefully touched Yi Feifei's arm. Then, he gathered spiritual power in his palm and spread the blood away from her arm. Du Fan looked at Yi Feifei and saw that she was clenching her teeth so hard that her lips were bleeding, but she did not make a sound. However, her other hand was tightly gripping the corner of her clothes. Because she was trying to control herself, the veins on her hand were bulging. It was obvious how much pain she was enduring. Feng Jiu applied the ointment that he had prepared on the side onto Yi Feifei's arm. Then, he used a bamboo board to fix her arm and bandaged it carefully. He did not raise his head and said, I'll fix this arm for you. Don't move it, in case it moves again. He did not hear any sound for a while. He raised his head and saw that she had fainted from the pain. Her small face was pale. He said to Du Fan, carry her to the bed. Be careful, don't hurt her hand. Okay. Du Fan responded and watched as Feng Jiu finished bandaging her arm. Then, he carefully carried Yi Feifei to the bed. Feng Jiu walked to the table, wrote a prescription, and handed it to Ling Shuang. Go buy 3 sets of medicine and boil it for her, one at a time. Yes, Ling Shuang replied. He took the prescription and walked out. After being busy for most of the night, Feng Jiu let out a sigh of relief. He glanced at Yi Feifei on the bed and said to Du Fan, go wash up and rest. I'll keep an eye on things here. Du Fan nodded and left. He did not return to his room, but went downstairs to instruct the waiter to prepare some dishes and rice before returning to his room to wash up. After taking a bath and changing into a new set of clothes, he walked out of the room and was greeted by the waiter. Young master, the food is ready. Would you like to have it sent to your room or eat on the first floor? The waiter asked with a smile. Du Fan paused, thought for a moment, and said, let's eat on the first floor. Wait for us to go downstairs before serving the food, so it won't get cold. As he spoke, he walked to Feng Jiu's room and knocked on the door. Master. Feng Jiu opened the door and looked at Du Fan, asking, what's wrong? You haven't had dinner yet. I had the waiter prepare the food on the first floor. As Du Fan spoke, he glanced at the room and said, she'll be fine resting in this inn. Master, you should go downstairs and eat first. Hearing this, Feng Jiu nodded. All right. He closed the door and went downstairs with him. When the waiter saw them go downstairs, he went to the kitchen to serve the food and wine. After serving the food, he left. Chapter 41-45. Feng Jiu took a sip of his wine and smiled, if we can't leave, then we'll just have to wait for them to come knocking on our door. The guards at the black market were not killed, they will go back and report. As for the owner of the black market, let's see if he has a death wish. She paused for a moment, then said to Du Fan, "Did you ask the kitchen to prepare something for Fei Fei to eat? She should wake up in the middle of the night. She will need to drink her medicine later, so we have to let her eat something." "Yes, I asked the waiter to ask the kitchen to prepare some porridge," Du Fan replied. Fengjiu smiled, "You're so careful, you know what to do even without me telling you." As he spoke, he looked at him teasingly, then picked up his chopsticks and ate some food. Du Fan heard this and smiled, "I've been by master's side for many years, I know what to do." With just one look, he knew what his master's teasing gaze meant. It seemed that his master liked to watch a good show. Yes, watch the show between him and Yi Feifei. "Master." Leng Shuang came back with the medicine. Seeing them on the first floor, she called out. Du Fan stood up and said, "I'll go prepare the porridge. You accompany master to eat." "No need, I'll go," Leng Shuang said. Du Fan stepped forward and took the medicine, saying, "I've already eaten." "You haven't eaten yet. Sit down and accompany master to eat. The food was just served not long ago." As soon as his voice fell, he didn't wait for her to say anything and walked towards the kitchen. "Let him do as he pleases. Sit down and eat." Fengjiu gestured. Leng Shuang sat down and said, "Master, the people outside are already spreading the news about the black market. There are also many people watching outside the inn. Don't worry about them." Fengjiu did not care. Seeing this, Leng Shuang did not say anything else, but picked up the rice and ate. In the middle of the night, Yi Feifei woke up. Leng Shuang brought her porridge. After she ate, he brought her a bowl of medicine and said, "Drink this medicine later." Yi Feifei looked at the medicine on the side. It was black and smelled strongly of medicine. Seeing that the medicine was still hot, she was not in a hurry to drink it. Instead, she leaned against the headboard. Fainting was one thing, but now that she woke up, she felt a sharp pain in her arm. Even though it was the second half of the night, she couldn't sleep at all. "Leng Shuang, will the people from the black market take revenge if we stay here overnight?" Yi Feifei asked worriedly. "Master is here. Don't worry." Leng Shuang slept in his clothes on the soft couch and said, "Don't forget to drink the medicine. It can help you recover. Besides, Du Fan made it for you." Hearing this, Yi Feifei was stunned. She wanted to ask more, but saw that Leng Shuang had already closed his eyes and was asleep. So, she did not disturb him. She looked at the steaming medicine and thought of Leng Shuang's words. Her heart skipped a beat. When the medicine was not so hot, she picked it up with her uninjured hand, held her breath and drank it in one gulp. Because the 4 elders of the black market were killed in one night, the news spread quietly even though Fengjiu had ordered them not to spread it. Almost all the powers in the city knew about this shocking incident that night. They also knew that the people who destroyed the black market were staying in the inn in the city and had not left. Of course, some people kept an eye on the inn, but no one dared to act rashly. Chapter 41-46. But what? Another person asked, his gaze landing on him. But, this cloud-swallowing beast, and hearing your description, I have a faint guess. The middle-aged man said, his face deep in thought. Hearing this, the few of them looked at each other, saying, if you have something to say, just say it. That middle-aged man looked at them, took a deep breath, and slowly said, you should have heard of the ghost Dr. Fengjiu, right? When these words came out, the few of them couldn't help but widen their eyes in shock. You mean, they are the ghost Dr. Fengjiu's people? The middle-aged man shook his head, no, but after hearing what you said, I feel that the ghost Dr. Fengjiu is here, and he is the master of those people you mentioned, the beautiful woman in red. Hiss. The few of them sucked in a breath of cold air. Today, a few of their old friends were sitting down and discussing, guessing that these people might be aristocratic figures from some place. But they didn't expect to hear him say that the person who destroyed the black market was the ghost Dr. Feng Jiu's people. This can't be right. Our place is considered a more remote town, why would the ghost Dr. Feng Jiu come here? Moreover, there aren't many people by his side, just 2 or 3 people, and that little girl who was caught by the black market is also very weak, there's no way she could be the ghost Dr. Feng Jiu's people. They were shocked, and found it inconceivable. That legendary figure, that person who caused such a huge commotion in this world, actually came to their city. They knew that the ruler of this world was one of the generals under the ghost Dr. Feng Jiu. That kind of person, in their eyes, was too high to reach, too far to reach, so it was impossible for him to appear in front of them. It was also because of this, when they heard that the ghost Dr. Feng Jiu was here, their first reaction was disbelief. This was really too hard to believe. If it wasn't for them, who do you think would be able to destroy those people from the black market with just a few people? Who would have the guts to stay in an inn in the city as if nothing had happened after destroying the black market? The middle-aged man glanced at them and sighed. Fortunately, you didn't get involved in this matter at that time. Hearing this, the few of them were shocked. Some of them had wanted to step out and help after hearing the conditions offered by the black market elder, but now, they were scared. A chill rose from the soles of their feet and went straight to their hearts, making them shiver involuntarily. The air seemed to have frozen, and there was no sound or movement for a long time. They sat there quietly, trying to calm their emotions. After a while, someone asked, "Do you think the owner of the black market has guessed their identities?" Hearing this, they paused, looked at each other, and said, "It's possible. They've probably guessed it, so there's no movement. Otherwise, how could it be so quiet at this time, and nothing has happened?" The middle-aged man said, "The black market's power is quite big, but if the ghost Dr. Feng Jiu wants to destroy it, it's really a simple matter." The few of them talked, and waited until dawn to see if there was any movement in the city. Chapter 41-47. The owner of the black market, who had brought the guests and the gifts, looked uneasy and nervous. When he heard the news, he had ordered his men to investigate their backgrounds. He did not expect them to be the ghost Dr. Feng Jiu himself. He pondered for an entire night before deciding to make a personal trip to the inn to ask for forgiveness. When he arrived at the entrance of the inn, he personally asked, "Have the guests here woken up?" The innkeeper was a little flustered when he saw such a large group of guests. However, he calmed down when he heard the owner's question. The other party addressed the guests upstairs as distinguished guests, so they shouldn't make things difficult for them. Therefore, after a while, he said respectfully, "Those guests went to bed very late last night, so they haven't woken up yet." The owner of the black market paused and said, "All right then. I will wait here for them to wake up." As he spoke, he gestured for his men to wait outside while he led a middle-aged man into the inn and sat down in a corner. The innkeeper did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly served them tea before retreating. The commotion downstairs did not alarm Feng Jiu and the rest. Only Ling Shuang had woken up early to help Yi Feifei brew medicine. He saw the owner of the black market sitting on the first floor. When the innkeeper saw Ling Shuang, he went over to the owner of the black market and said, "This lady works for the lady in red." The owner of the black market, who was looking at Ling Shuang and secretly guessing, immediately stood up and hurriedly called out, "Miss Ling Shuang." Ling Shuang stopped in his tracks and looked at the middle-aged man who was walking over. The owner of the black market cupped his hands and said, "I am Chu Xiong, the owner of the black market. When I found out that one of my subordinates had offended you, I am here to apologize." Hearing this, Ling Shuang glanced at him and said, "My master hasn't woken up yet." With that, she walked towards the kitchen. Chu Xiong paused and looked at the innkeeper beside him. He asked, "Why is she in the kitchen?" This young lady was brewing medicine for another young lady upstairs. When that young lady came back, she was injured quite badly. Her hand was twisted and displaced. the shopkeeper said softly. Chu Xiong paused. Thinking of what his subordinates had done, he sighed helplessly. He had heard that the ghost Dr. Fengjiu was extremely protective of his own people. His subordinate had broken her hand and injured her, he was afraid that she would not let it go so easily. Thinking about how the black market storehouse had been emptied, he smiled bitterly to himself. This time, not only did many of his subordinates die, the treasures in the storehouse were also taken away. This was a double loss. If it was someone else, he would definitely take it back. However, this person was the ghost Dr. Fengjiu, so he could only swallow this loss. He returned to the table in the corner and sat down to wait. When it was close to noon, he saw a woman in red come down from the second floor while yawning. Looking at the beautiful woman in red, he immediately stood up nervously. Was this the ghost Dr. Fengjiu? Was this the legendary ghost Dr. Fengjiu? She was truly, indescribably beautiful and peerless. The moment he saw her, he realized that the most attractive thing about her was not her beautiful face, but the noble aura that emanated from her body. The noble aura that she exuded from her every movement carried a hint of casualness and laziness. It was inexplicably hard for people to shift their gazes away. Chapter 41-48. He bowed deeply, raising his hands high before slowly kneeling down. His forehead rested on his hands, and he did not get up. Fengjiu had just woken up, and even though she had washed up, her face was still sleepy. Her hand that was yawning paused, and her clear eyes narrowed. She lazily leaned against the railing of the stairs, looking at the middle-aged man kneeling on the ground. When the middle-aged man behind saw his master bow so deeply, he quickly stepped forward and respectfully knelt behind her. Chu Xiong? She lazily asked, her mind spinning. Looking at the person kneeling by the stairs, she was just about to ask who he was, when she saw Du Fan walk out from the room and stand behind her. Master, it's the master of the black market. Du Fan said, gently fanning himself with the fan in his hand, his gaze looking at the person kneeling below. Oh. The master of the black market? Fengjiu raised her eyebrows, looked at the person below, and asked, what are you doing here? As she spoke, she slowly walked down step by step. Hearing her words, Chu Xiong panicked, and said, Ghost Doctor, I'm here to ask for forgiveness. I didn't discipline my subordinates well, please forgive me, Ghost Doctor. Fengjiu walked past him, and sat down at a table on the first floor. She slowly said, it's normal for the underground black market to do some shady business, but this kind of kidnapping and trading of women is not something I'm used to seeing, especially when you're touching my people. Chu Xiong's forehead was covered in cold sweat. When he heard her words, he felt a strong pressure pressing down on him, as if as long as she willed it, he would be crushed to death here. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. He held his breath, his heart in his throat. Even if the other party spoke casually, he was still scared out of his wits. He immediately said, Ghost Doctor, please investigate. This matter, I really didn't know about it. In the future, I will discipline my subordinates well, and they won't do it again. The shopkeeper brought the waiter to personally serve them food and wine, then respectfully retreated, not daring to look at the two people still kneeling on the ground. Fengjiu poured a cup of wine and took a sip. After a while, she said, Go back. Discipline your subordinates well. If they do it again, it's one thing if I don't know, but if I know, I won't let you off so easily like this time. Yes, thank you Ghost Doctor. I will discipline my subordinates well, and they won't do it again. He hurriedly said. When he felt the pressure covering him disappear from the top of his head, he took a deep breath and hurriedly stood up to leave. He didn't dare to stay any longer and quickly left with his people. Du Fan sat down at the side and asked, Master, did you spare their lives because you emptied the black market storehouse? Fengjiu smiled and said, that was only one of the reasons. Secondly, he didn't kill them again, and even came to ask for forgiveness. No matter what his intentions were, since he dared to come and ask for forgiveness, then his crime doesn't warrant death. Moreover, we don't have any deep hatred with him. Killing the 4 elders under him, and emptying his black market storehouse, can be considered teaching him a lesson. After all these years, she had seen too many things, and her temperament had changed. Sometimes, there were some things, or some people, that didn't warrant death. She was willing to spare their lives, and give them a chance. Hearing this, Du Fan smiled, at least he knows his place. Chapter 41-49. Okay. Du Fan replied and asked the waiter to call Ling Xuan and Yi Feifei. After they finished eating, they continued on their journey in the spirit deer carriage. The people in the city could not help but sigh in relief when they saw them leave in the spirit deer carriage. They finally left. God knows how worried they were. What would happen to them here? Yi Feifei was sitting in the carriage with medicine still tied to her arm. Her complexion was much better than yesterday and she was in good spirits. Fengjiu sat by the window with one hand on the window and looked at the scenery outside. He said, "It's been some time since we left. I wonder how the 2 little guys are doing. Do they miss me?" Ling Xuan heard and said, "The 2 little masters are under the care of the Yama Lord. They will be fine. Master, you don't have to worry. Master, if you miss the little masters, then we can go back as soon as we find the ancient 9-tailed fox." Yi Feifei said and looked at Fengjiu, "Master, how long will it take for us to reach the forest?" "We won't be there so soon. It's not a short journey." Fengjiu said and looked at Yi Feifei, "Come, give me your hand." Hearing this, Yi Feifei stretched out his hand and heard her say, "Not this hand, the injured hand." "Oh." Yi Feifei turned her body slightly and carefully untied the hand that was wrapped around her neck. She saw her master dismantle the things on her hand, including the bamboo board and the cloth that was tied around it. The blood clots on her arm had disappeared. It was still red and swollen, but it was not as scary as it was last night. Seeing this, she said, "Master, the medicine is very good. I also drank the medicine made by Ling Xuan. My hand doesn't hurt as much. It should be better in a few days." Fengjiu smiled and said, "Last night, your arm was filled with blood and dislocated bones. Today, I'll use the power of the azure lotus to help you heal your bones quickly." As she spoke, she gathered spiritual energy in her palms and drew out the power of the green lotus from her body. As she held on to Yi Feifei's arm, specks of green light seeped into her arm. The redness and swelling on her arm gradually disappeared. Under the skin, the broken bones were also healing at an extremely fast speed. Yi Feifei blinked her eyes in shock. She watched as the swelling on her arm disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Furthermore, she could even feel that the broken bones in her arm were healing. The pain in her bones was disappearing bit by bit. After a while, Fengjiu withdrew his hand and said to Yi Feifei, "Try clenching your fist to test your strength." "Oh." Yi Feifei responded in a daze and clenched his fist. He saw that his fist, which was originally unable to be clenched, was clenched tightly. The blood clots that had flowed down to his palm due to the blockage had also returned to normal due to his master's treatment. It's really healed." She blinked her eyes in disbelief and turned her hand to look left and right. Finally, she said happily, "Master, it's really healed. My hand is really healed. The power of the azure lotus can even heal internal injuries. It's just broken bones. As long as the blood clots are dealt with and the bones are fixed, the power of the azure lotus can naturally heal them." Fengjiu smiled and looked at her and said, "You are the weakest. This time, when you go to the Azure Demon Forest, you must step up your training." Chapter 41-50. Seeing her full of confidence, Fengjiu smiled and took out a book and handed it to her. "There is a set of body movements in this book. You should memorize it first and then practice it. In the future, even if you can't beat them, you can escape first. Thank you, master. Yi Feifei said happily and took the book with both hands and started to read. Leng Shuang looked at her sleeveless hand and then looked at Yi Feifei. Seeing that she seemed to have forgotten about it, he asked, "Do you want to change your clothes first?" Ah. Yi Feifei froze for a moment and followed Leng Shuang's gaze. Only then did he remember that because her hand was injured, this half of her sleeve was torn. Now that her hand had recovered, naturally, she could put on her clothes. So he smiled embarrassedly, "I forgot for a moment. Well, I'll change it now." She did as she said and changed her clothes in the spirit deer carriage. Fengjiu and Leng Shuang looked at each other and smiled. This little girl was also careless. She changed her clothes as she wished. Wasn't she worried that Du Fan would suddenly open the carriage door and come in? Of course, Du Fan wouldn't come in because he heard the voices inside. At this time, he knew that Yi Feifei's hand was healed. He smiled and drove the spirit deer carriage forward. Half a month later, they arrived at a city and prepared to enter the Cyan Devil Forest. In half a month's time, Yi Feifei's body movements had become very skillful. In addition to Du Fan teaching her, Fengjiu would occasionally give her 1 or 2 pointers. Perhaps it was because of getting along with each other, Du Fan and Yi Feifei were getting along better and better. They no longer bickered as they used to. "Master, Cyan Devil City is the closest city to the Cyan Devil Forest. This place is relatively prosperous and there are all kinds of people in the city. It's also more complicated. Since we plan to enter the Cyan Devil Forest, let's first prepare in Cyan Devil City and prepare everything we need before we set off." Du Fan drove the spirit deer carriage in and said to Fengjiu, who was sitting in the carriage. "And, let's find an inn to stay at. Let's take a stroll around the city and stay there for a day or 2. We'll set off when we're refreshed," Fengjiu said as he lifted the curtain to look outside. It was just as they had heard when they came. The city was bustling, but it was also filled with all sorts of people. Because there were many mercenaries who accepted missions, and there were also people who did not follow their families who came out to train, the inns in the city could be said to be extremely popular all year round. They went to 3 or 4 inns but did not find any empty rooms. In the end, they asked around and found out that there was an inn in the city that was twice as expensive as an ordinary inn. However, there were rooms available all year round, and they were also extremely high class. Thus, the few of them asked for directions and went to that inn. "Guests, are you here to stay?" The waiter came up to them and asked. He sized them up and a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. These people's appearances were too outstanding. Even though he was a waiter who worked in the inn and had seen many outstanding young masters and young ladies from aristocratic families, he had rarely seen anyone who looked like them. However, he was after all a waiter who had seen a lot of the world. He quickly collected his thoughts and enthusiastically led the way for them. "Ladies and gentlemen, why don't you sit down and have a cup of tea and something to eat?" Du Fan handed the deer carriage to another waiter outside and followed them inside. When he saw inside, he couldn't help but smile. Chapter 41-51. "Master, let's sit down and rest for a while," Du Fan said to Fengjiu. "All right." Fengjiu agreed and followed the waiter to an empty table. After sitting down, Du Fan looked at the waiter and said, "Waiter, prepare 3 rooms for us." "All right, waiter. Please follow me to the counter to pay for the rooms," the waiter said as he poured tea for them. Then, he gestured for them to follow him to the counter. Fengjiu and the others sat down while Du Fan followed the waiter to settle the procedures. After paying for the rooms, he came back and saw that many people sitting on the first floor drinking tea were looking at them. He walked to the table and sat down. He said to Fengjiu, "Master, do you want to rest first?" "No need. After sitting for a while and drinking tea, I'll walk around the city with Leng Shuang and the others. Fengjiu said and took a sip of tea. Then, he looked at Du Fan and said with a smile, do you want to buy anything? You can also walk around and see if there's anything you want to buy. Hearing this, Du Fan nodded, all right, then I won't be with you later. Fengjiu smiled and said, this Azure Demon City is close to the Azure Demon Forest. Many rogue cultivators will bring their prey or spiritual herbs here to sell. There should be a lot of people here. We'll rest here for 2 days and look around and ask for information. Yes. The others replied. They knew that the information she was talking about was about the ancient nine-tailed fox spirit. They rested in the inn for a while. After chatting and drinking a few cups of tea, Du Fan handed the small wooden sign for the room to Fengjiu. Master, this room is yours. If you come back first, you can find your room by following this wooden sign. Then, he handed another one to Leng Shuang, you and Feifei will share a room. These 3 rooms are connected. Master will take the room in the middle. Yes. Fengjiu responded and put away the small wooden tablet. Then he stood up and said, let's go. Let's go out for a walk. Yi Feifei followed Fengjiu with anticipation and joy. She looked at Du Fan and said, Brother Du, we'll go first. Be careful when you're alone. Along the way, the 2 of them got along better and better. She also obediently called him Big Brother Du. After all, he had taken care of her along the way. Yes, follow Master and Leng Shuang closely. Don't run around by yourself. Du Fan instructed. Let's go. Fengjiu said as she walked out. Leng Shuang and Yi Feifei followed behind her. Du Fan watched the 3 of them leave. He sat for a while and drank the tea in his cup. Then, he walked out of the inn and went in another direction. Seeing them leave, a man in brocade clothes in the inn said, who are those people? Their temperament is really outstanding. Haha, Brother Wan, are you trying to say that those girls are very beautiful? A man sitting next to him laughed and said, however, those people are really very dazzling. Especially that woman in red. She is really a peerless beauty. Seeing that the 4 of them came here, and their strength is unfathomable. Not to mention Brother Wan, I am also curious about their background. Chapter 41-52. A middle-aged man said. As soon as he finished speaking, no one else said anything. This was because they had observed the people who had come in. From their auras, they knew that they were people who had been in positions of power for a long time. Moreover, their cultivations were unfathomable. Even some of the people with extremely high cultivations were unable to see through their cultivations. Of course, among the 4 people, there was a woman whose cultivation was relatively low, and they could tell at a glance. However, with the 3 people with unfathomable strength, everyone naturally ignored the weak woman. At this moment, a young girl at another table was curious. She could not help but ask the old man next to her in a small voice, "Fourth Grandpa, are those people really powerful? One of them is on par with you. The other 3 are unfathomable." The old man in gray said as he stroked his beard thoughtfully. After a pause, he looked at the people at the same table and said, "Go back and tell the people below not to cause trouble casually. More importantly, they are not to offend those people." Hearing this, the middle-aged men at the same table were slightly surprised. They looked at each other but did not say anything. They only nodded, "All right, we understand." Fengjiu and the others did not pay much attention to the people and matters in the inn. At this moment, they were strolling along the street towards the central trading area. Because it was a major trading city, there was a large area designated for rogue cultivators to sell things. Yi Feifei walked along the main street until he arrived at the trading area. Looking at the things on the ground, Yi Feifei's eyes lit up. So this is how they sell things. Just a square piece of cloth will do. If we close the stall, we can just roll up the cloth and leave. That's convenient. She walked to a small stall and squatted down to look. Seeing that the stall was filled with small magic tools and formations, she could not help but look around and buy a few small magic tools to keep. You guys walk around. I'll go see if there are any medicinal herbs. Fengjiu said, gesturing for Ling Shuang and Yi Feifei to go together. Master, where can we find you later? Yi Feifei hurriedly asked. Fengjiu looked around and pointed at a tea stall not far away. If you don't see me, just wait for me there. They followed her hand and nodded. Okay. Watching her leave, Yi Feifei pulled Ling Shuang to another stall selling daggers and said, Ling Shuang, can you help me see which dagger is good? I want to buy one for self-defense. Ling Shuang squatted down to take a look and said, nothing much. Her words were straightforward, but the rogue cultivator selling daggers was displeased. Miss, you're wrong. The daggers in my stall are all good daggers that can cut through iron like mud, and they were all refined by me. How are they not good? It's a good knife, but it's not up to my standards. Ling Shuang's voice was calm and indifferent. She glanced at Yi Feifei and said, let's look at the others. Oh, okay. When Yi Feifei heard her say that it was not good, she did not look anymore. Instead, she put down the dagger and stood up to leave with her. Chapter 41-53. From his point of view, the coldness wasn't just an aura, but more of a murderous intent. He didn't dare to provoke such a person. Ling Shuang and Yi Feifei walked forward together. Looking at the stalls around them, Ling Shuang said, it's hard to find a good dagger in a place like this. It's okay. If we find something good, we'll buy it. If not, then forget it. Yi Feifei smiled and asked, Sister Ling Shuang, is there anything you want to buy? Ling Shuang shook his head. No. I want to buy anything interesting. Even if I don't need it, I'll just keep it. Yi Feifei said with a smile, so I'm very happy to be here. There are many things sold here that I've never seen before. As she was speaking, she suddenly stopped in her tracks and looked at a cage placed on a stall not far away. Inside the cage were a dozen mice the size of an egg. Seeing that she stopped, Ling Shuang followed her gaze and saw that in addition to the gray little spirit mouse, there was also a white little spirit mouse. There were about 15 or 16 of them, all of which were the size of eggs. That's a mouse, Ling Shuang said with a frown. Even if it was a spirit mouse, it was still a mouse in her eyes. Hearing this, Yi Feifei couldn't help but chuckle. It's not a mouse, it's a spirit mouse. Come, let's go take a look. As he said this, he pulled her forward. Miss, do you want to buy a spirit mouse? This is a spirit mouse from the Azure Devil Forest. Although it's small now, it'll grow bigger after a while. When that time comes, it can burrow into the ground or... Before the cultivator finished speaking, Yi Feifei pointed at the white one and said, take this white one out for me to see. Huh, miss, you have good taste. This is the only white spirit mouse in my nest. As the cultivator spoke, he took out the white little spirit mouse and tied its feet with a rope before handing it to Yi Feifei. Miss, look. Tying it up like this won't let it escape. Although this spirit mouse is small, its reaction is very sensitive and its movements are very fast. If we don't pay attention, we won't let it escape. Will it bite? Yi Feifei asked. Looking at the squeaking little spirit mouse, he did not reach out to take it. No, it won't bite. It's a vegetarian and doesn't eat meat. The cultivator chuckled. Hearing this, Yi Feifei felt relieved and took it. Then let me touch it. She held the little thing in one hand and gently stroked its head with the other. Its smooth fur was not prickly at all. On the contrary, it was soft and very comfortable. That was fun. Yi Feifei couldn't help but smile. However, at this moment, the little spirit mouse suddenly bit Yi Feifei's finger. Ah! Yi Feifei felt the pain and flung the little spirit mouse away. She looked down and saw that her finger was bleeding. She couldn't help but stare at the cultivator. "Didn't you say it doesn't bite? Why did it bite me?" "This. I don't know. This spirit mouse is a vegetarian and doesn't eat meat." The cultivator was also stunned for a moment. Because his hand was still holding the rope that tied the spirit mouse, when Yi Feifei was startled and threw the little spirit mouse away, his hand also pulled it back. It landed in the palm of his hand and he stuffed it back into the cage. Chapter 41-54. Squeak squeak squeak. Squeak squeak squeak. The little spirit mouse squeaked while Yi Feifei stared at it blankly. After hearing Leng Shuang's words, she wanted to squeeze blood out of her hand. However, when she looked at it, she only saw a trace of blood oozing out. Her face turned pale. After a while, she said to the cultivator, "How much is this white spirit mouse? Since you like it, I'll sell it for 100 gold coins." "I'm selling it for 120 gold coins. The cultivator said with a smile. "It's too expensive." Yi Feifei looked down at her bitten hand and said, "I'll buy it for 10 gold coins." Seeing that the cultivator was about to speak, she said, "If you don't want to sell it, then you have to pay for my bitten hand. I was bitten by your little white mouse and I'm bleeding. You have to pay me 10 gold coins." The cultivator stared at her. He originally wanted to bargain, but when he heard her words, he felt as if his breath was stuck in his throat. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't. It was very uncomfortable. 10 gold coins are equivalent to 100 silver coins. "Do you want to make 10 gold coins? Or do you want to pay 10 gold coins?" Yi Feifei asked. "Hey, okay. Isn't it just a little spirit mouse? I'll sell it to you, okay? 10 gold coins it is." The cultivator said and shook his head, but he was secretly happy. He didn't know how this white spirit mouse got into the cage when he came back from the Cyan Demon Forest. At that time, it was injured, but it recovered after a few days of rest. Anyway, it was free. 10 gold coins. It was 10 gold coins. He wouldn't lose money. Leng Shuang watched her hand over the money and take the little spiritual mouse. After walking some distance away from the stall, Leng Shuang asked, "Is there anything special about this little mouse?" Yi Feifei stared at the little spirit mouse in her hand with a strange expression. Then she looked up at Leng Shuang and said, "I heard it talking to me. It asked me to save it." Hearing this, Leng Shuang glanced at the little spiritual mouse and said, "There's nothing special about this little mouse. It's just an ordinary spiritual mouse." Just as he was about to shift his gaze away, his footsteps involuntarily paused. His gaze once again landed on the little spirit mouse as he said, "That's not right." "Ah. What's wrong?" Yi Feifei asked. The little spirit mouse was in her palm. It was soft, small, and very cute. The color of its eyes has changed. Leng Shuang stared at the little white mouse and said, "It was no different from other spirit mice before, but now, one of its eyes is blue and the other is gold." It seems to be true." As Yi Feifei spoke, he asked curiously, "Why are its eyes like this?" "I don't know." Leng Shuang withdrew his gaze and said, "Put it away first and ask mistress later. Perhaps she will know." Therefore, Yi Feifei stuffed the little spirit mouse into her arms and said with a smile, "Sister Leng Shuang, let's go ahead and have a look." On this side, the two continued to walk around. On the other side, Fengjiu was squatting in front of a stall looking at the seeds. She looked and said, "Are these all spiritual medicine seeds?" Chapter 41-55. The cultivator took out a small pouch and poured out more than a dozen seeds. He grinned and said, "Miss, these are not ordinary seeds. These seeds can only be found by chance. In the entire city, I'm the only one who has more than a dozen top-quality spirit medicine seeds. Fengjiu took a look and saw that the seeds were the size of soybeans. They were a mix of several different colors. It was clear that they were mixed together. She picked up a black seed and looked at it. She asked, "What kind of seed is this?" "This, I don't know what kind of seed this is, but I've asked around. This is the seed of a top-grade spiritual medicine. Look, each seed has a spiritual aura wrapped around it. This is something that the other seeds don't have. If it wasn't for the fact that I can see that you're a knowledgeable person, I wouldn't have taken these seeds out." "Ha ha ha, surnamed Li, are you trying to trick people with those useless seeds again?" A man wearing a brocade robe walked over with a fan in his hand. Although he was talking to the cultivator, his eyes were fixed on Fengjiu, but he pretended to be reserved. After glancing at Fengjiu, he coughed and said, "Miss, don't listen to his bragging. No matter who buys these seeds, they won't be able to live. He can only trick people like you who come from out of town. Everyone in the city knows that his seeds are a scam." The cultivator's expression changed. He wanted to curse at the man in brocade, but he didn't dare to offend him due to the power behind him. He could only awkwardly smile and say, "Young Master Wang, you can't say that. I obtained this seed from the depths of the Azure Demon Forest. It is indeed a good thing. This isn't a lie, right?" Fengjiu glanced at the man and gently turned the seed in his hand. He didn't say anything, but he seemed to be deep in thought. No one knew what he was thinking. "Miss, if you want seeds, you can come with me to my family's shop. You can have any kind of seeds you want there. They are definitely better than the ones you see on the street. Also, I won't take Mrs. money. I just want to be friends with Mississippi," the brocade-robed man said with a smile. He held a fan and bowed to Fengjiu, his eyes still fixed on her body. Fengjiu didn't look at him and only asked the cultivator, "How much are these seeds?" "This." The cultivator originally wanted to ask for an exorbitant price, but after being interrupted by the man in brocade robe, he couldn't ask for a high price, but he also couldn't ask for a low price. Thus, he smiled and said, "If Miss likes them, then just give me whatever you want." Hearing this, Fengjiu put the seeds back into the cultivator's hand. "And these seeds over here, give me a pack of each of them." Okay. The cultivator suddenly smiled and gave her the seeds. She handed him a small pouch of money. He reached out and took it. It was heavy and heavy. He couldn't help but open it slightly to take a look. Seeing that it was full of shiny gold coins, he smiled happily and narrowed his eyes. Chapter 4156. Thank you. Fengjiu smiled. After receiving the item, she put it into her space. She stood up and gently brushed her skirt as she prepared to leave. Who knew that the man in embroidered clothes was still standing there, waiting for her? "Miss, my surname is Wang. How should I address you?" The man in embroidered clothes asked, trying his best to maintain the appearance of an elegant young master. He felt that the woman in red in front of him had an extraordinary temperament. She should be a descendant of an aristocratic family like him, so he didn't act too presumptuously. "I still want to walk around. Don't follow me and block my way," Fengjiu said lightly and walked forward. When the man in embroidered clothes heard this, he quickly said, "Then let me lead the way for Miss. My Wang clan is the head of the 8 great clans in Azure Demon City. I am familiar with the city." Hearing this, Fengjiu raised her eyebrows, "The head of the 8 great clans?" When young Master Wang saw that she finally looked at him, he immediately puffed out his chest and fanned himself with the fan in his hand. With a proud face, he slightly raised his chin and said, "That's right, my Wang clan is the head of the 8 great clans in Azure Demon City. Everyone in the city knows me. Oh right, I haven't introduced myself. My surname is Wang and my name is Wang Yu. I am the son of the Wang clan. Everyone in the city calls me Lord. Feng Jiu nodded as the corners of her lips curled up into a smile. A light flashed in her clear eyes as she looked at him and asked with a smile, in that case, if we were to ask about the matters of Azure Demon City, young master, you should be the most knowledgeable about them. His eyes flickered slightly when he saw the smile on the woman's lips, but he quickly returned to his senses. He said complacently, of course. My ancestors have lived in Azure Demon City for generations. Let alone Azure Demon City, I even know where you can't go in Azure Demon Forest and where there are powerful ferocious beasts. Hearing this, Feng Jiu smiled and said, then let's find a place to sit. I have some things I want to ask Lord Yu. Okay. Shall we go to the tea house in front? He pointed to a tea house not far away. Okay. Feng Jiu said and followed him to the tea house. They walked to the tea house, followed by 2 attendants of the Wang family. The street was bustling with activity, but she still heard a woman's cries and cries for help in the alley ahead on the left. She was about to go and have a look when she heard Wang Yu give an order to the people behind her. Go to the alley in front and see what's going on. He gestured for the attendants behind him to take a look. Yes. One of the attendants quickly walked towards the alley and came back not long after. Young master, the 3rd young master of the Zheng family has taken a fancy to a girl who sells medicine and is trying to force her to marry him. The attendant stepped forward and whispered in Wang Yu's ear. Hearing this, Wang Yu's face darkened and she scolded, it's that Zheng boy again. Let's go and have a look. She strode forward, but after taking 2 steps, she seemed to remember that Feng Jiu was behind her, so she turned back and said with a smile, Miss, wait for me here. I'll go and deal with someone. I'll be back soon. How about you wait for me at the tea house? Feng Jiu smiled and said, it doesn't matter. I'll go with you. Chapter 41-57. When they arrived at the alley, they saw a man dressed in luxurious clothes standing at the side. 2 attendants were pulling a young girl. The young girl had a delicate and pretty appearance. At that moment, she was panicking and scared. Her helpless appearance and her tears added to her pitiful appearance, causing others to feel pity for her. There were also a few cultivators who had set up stalls in the alley. However, all of them had an indifferent look on their faces. They only watched and did not try to persuade or help. The medicinal herbs on the ground were scattered all over the ground. Some of them had been trampled to pieces. A bamboo basket was thrown into the corner and some medicinal herbs were hanging on the side of the basket. No, don't pull me, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. The girl cried and begged. However, with her weak strength, she could not break free from the 2 attendants. Let go of the girl. A sonorous and powerful shout came from the entrance of the alley, which stunned everyone in the alley and made them look in the direction of the sound. Feng Jiu followed behind Wang Yu. Hearing his shout, a smile flashed across his eyes. It was really interesting. Oh, I was wondering who it was. It turned out to be Master Yu. What? You also like this girl? I'm sorry you're late. I like her, and I'm going to take her back to the mansion. The man in luxurious clothes glanced at the crying girl, reached out his hand to wipe her tears, and said tenderly, don't cry. What's there to cry about? It's your blessing that I like you. You can live a good life with me. Can't it compare with the herbs you sell here? Because Feng Jiu was standing in the back, blocked by Wang Yu and his 2 attendants, the people in the alley could not see her. They only knew that there was a woman in a red dress behind her. However, they did not pay too much attention to her, and their eyes and attention only fell on Wang Yu. Zheng-san, you are also a member of several big families in the city. Your kidnapping will only bring shame to your Zheng family. Let her go. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Wang Yu shouted. What? You also like her? Zheng-san asked, one hand holding the young girl's waist. I won't let go, what can you do to me? Wang Yu looked at him coldly, waved the fan in her hand, and ordered the two attendants beside her, go. Beat the crap out of him. As soon as he finished speaking, two of his attendants rushed towards Zheng San. The two Zheng family attendants who were holding the girl immediately let go of her and quickly went to help. The young girl took the opportunity to wipe away her tears. She picked up the bamboo basket on the ground and packed it with the herbs that were not trampled and quickly left. Feng Nine stood quietly and watched. Seeing that Wang Yu's two attendants were stronger than the other two, they quickly suppressed the other side. However, the man surnamed Zheng came forward to help, waving his fist and rushing directly at Wang Yu's two attendants. Seeing this, Wang Yu immediately scolded. She put the fan in her hand to her waist, waved her fist, and went straight to Zheng San's face, "You little turtle. How dare you hit my people, I'll teach you a lesson." When the cultivators in the alley saw this, they hurriedly moved their stalls to the back. Some of them hurriedly packed up their things and went outside. Chapter 41-58. These people were hitting each other with their fists, using a lot of inner strength. They really didn't show any mercy, as if they were seizing the opportunity to beat each other to death. However, even though these people were fighting fiercely, no one used a weapon, nor did they try to kill each other. This made her a little surprised. Bang bang. Hiss. Wang Yu, you bastard. How dare you beat your master Zheng? I'm not beating you, you bastard. I've been wanting to beat you for a long time. If I don't beat you until you look for your teeth on the ground, I'm not surnamed Wang. Wang Yu waved her fists with all her strength. Her punches were aimed at the opponent's face. The force of her punches was loud, and it was painful to listen to. Ah! My teeth! Bastard! I'm not done with you. Hiss! How dare you hit my face? I'll let you hit my face, I'll let you hit my face. Bang bang bang. Feng Jiu watched from the side. She saw that the two young masters in embroidered clothes were in a mess from the fight. Even the jade crowns on their heads were messed up. There was also that Zheng San. His face was swollen like a pig's head. Young master, it's okay, don't hit, don't hit. Seeing this, the Wang family's attendants were afraid that they would beat him to death, and hurriedly came forward to pull their young master away. Master Zheng, how are you? The two attendants of the Zheng family did not care about the fight anymore, and hurriedly came forward to help him up. Get out! I'm going to kill that bastard! Zheng San roared, and with this roar, two of his teeth fell down, and his voice was also leaking air. He suddenly stiffened, touched his mouth, and looked at the teeth on the ground. For a moment, he was unable to restrain his anger. Bastard! I'll kill you! Master Zheng, don't hit, don't hit. The two attendants hurriedly held him down. Hiss, it hurts. How is my eye? Is it swollen? Wang Yu snorted, glanced at him, and touched his left eye to ask the attendant beside him. No, it's not swollen, just a little bruised. The attendant said in a soft voice. He lowered his head and did not dare to look at his messy appearance after being pulled. Young master Yu, are you all right? Feng Jiu asked with a smile. It's nothing. As he spoke, he turned his head around. When he saw Feng Jiu, he seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly lowered his head to tidy up his robes. Then, he realized that the jade crown on his head was crooked. He hurriedly tried to straighten it, but when he tried to straighten it, it became crooked again. Third master, let's go. Seeing that Wang Yu's attention was not on them, the two attendants of the Zheng family hurriedly pulled their master to leave. Unexpectedly, Zheng San was pulled away, but when he passed by Feng Jiu, he saw her face and suddenly couldn't move his legs. He was stunned and tried to open his swollen eyes to see the beauty in front of him, but at this moment, you idiot. What are you looking at? Get lost. Wang Yu saw his eyes staring at Fengjiu. She was annoyed and lifted her leg to kick his ass. Hiss. Wang Yu, you bastard. You wait for me. I won't let you go. Zheng San was kicked forward. Fortunately, the two attendants supported him, so he didn't fall to the ground. The two attendants were afraid that they would fight again, so they hurriedly half-dragged and half-escorted him away. Chapter 41-59. Fengjiu smiled and said, I think you're also badly injured. How about this? You go back and apply the medicine first. I'll stay in the city for 2 more days. Let's sit down and talk when you're better. Hearing this, Wang Yu looked down at her current appearance. She was in a mess and it was not suitable for her to sit down and talk, so she asked, Where do you live in the city? Where can I find you? And, you see, I still don't know your name. This. Fengjiu glanced at her and said, My surname is Feng. I live in the Qingyun Inn in the city. Hearing this, Wang Yu's eyes lit up. Well, I'll go back and apply the medicine first. I'll come to you tomorrow. Okay. Fengjiu responded, nodded slightly, and then turned to leave. After watching her leave, the two attendants looked at him and said, Young master, shall we go back first? Go back, go back. I'm too embarrassed to walk on the street like this, let alone accompany Miss Feng to chat in the inn. Let's go. I'll have to apply the medicine when I get back. As he spoke, he walked out of the room. The two attendants behind him hurriedly followed after him. When Wang Yu walked out of the alley and walked to the street, Fengjiu, who was not far behind, stopped and looked at the cultivators on the street smiling and greeting Wang Yu. He was very happy to hear them call him Young Master Yu. After seeing him leave, the people on the left and right sides also chatted. Well, compared with the young masters of other aristocratic families, this young Master Yu is very good. A cultivator who set up a stall said. Yes. At least the Wang family didn't bully us, and the children of the Wang family didn't kidnap girls like the Xing family did. Although this young Master Yu is a bit foppish, I've never heard of him kidnapping girls. And it is said that the Wang family has a rule that he can't touch other women before his wife marries into the family, let alone have a concubine. So he is still a virgin. Ha 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 ha, this is the rule left behind by the ancestors of the Wang family. The Wang family really abides by the rules. If it were any other family, children of his age would be running around everywhere. Hey, that's not right. I heard that the Wang family and the Yuan family are discussing marriage. I'm preparing to marry this young Master Yu. That's the news from last month. You definitely don't know. The third miss of the Yuan clan despises Prince Yu, saying that he's useless and doesn't deserve her. The marriage has long been called off. Is that so? You see, it's hard for these aristocratic families to get married. They have to have a similar family background, a handsome face, and strong strength. The young masters of aristocratic families have to consider all aspects before they marry a wife. Many of them are arranged by their parents. They don't like their wives even if they don't meet them. Fengjiu stood at a small stall not far away, looking at things while listening to the cultivator's conversation. After a while, she picked 2 trinkets, paid the money and got up to leave. When she first saw Wang Yu, she thought that he was a lecherous foppish young master. However, after interacting with him, she found that although he looked at her with amazement, there was no profanity. He just felt that she was very beautiful and stunning, so he approached her. What surprised her was that Wang Yu saved the girl, and it didn't look like he did it deliberately for her to see. Instead, it seemed like this was not the first time. Chapter 41-60. What was interesting was that this person was not as simple as he looked on the surface. He acted out the image of a hedonistic son of rich parents so well that she was almost fooled. However, if one observed carefully, they would know that this person was not as playboy and lustful as he looked on the surface. As a young master of a large family, if he was not spoiled, he would not be such an idiot. She wanted to ask him about the ancient nine-tailed fox spirit, but it seemed that she would have to do it another day. She smiled and put away her thoughts. She looked around to see if there was anything else that caught her eye. Du Fan did not go to the market. Instead, he asked around and went to the mercenary guild in the city. He felt that if he wanted to find out about the nine-tailed fox spirit, only the mercenaries who ran into the Cyan Devil Forest would know about it. When he arrived at the entrance of the mercenary guild, he saw a few mercenaries gathered outside. They were either sitting or standing in groups of 3 to 5, chatting. When they saw a stranger, they looked at him. "Young master, this is the mercenary guild. Did you come to the wrong place?" A burly man with a strong waist and a strong back said with a smile. He was drinking from a bottle of wine in his hand. "I'm looking for the mercenary guild. I didn't come to the wrong place." Du Fan replied with a smile. His steps were light and slow, and he walked forward with the appearance of an elegant young master. The burly man drank another mouthful of wine and wiped his mouth with his sleeve. He said to Du Fan, "Young master, are you here to issue a mission? We can accept any mission. The price can be negotiated." "No." Du Fan shook his head and stepped into the guild hall. When the woman at the counter saw Du Fan, she thought that he was here to issue a mission. She stood up and asked with a smile, "Young master, how can I help you? Is your president here?" Du Fan asked. He tapped on the counter lightly with one hand and looked inside. Hearing this, the woman was startled and asked, "May I know your name? Why are you looking for our president?" Du Fan smiled and said, "Give me a piece of paper and a pen." "Yes." The woman responded and took a pen and paper from the counter for him. Then, she stood there and looked at him. However, she saw him glance at her with a faint smile. She couldn't help but blush. Then, she sat down and didn't look at what he wrote. "Give this paper to your president." As Du Fan spoke, he glanced at the woman and smiled. "You can't peek. You can only hand it to your president personally." "Yes." The woman blushed and hurriedly responded. Then, she took the folded paper and went inside. Du Fan walked to a chair at the side and sat down. The people sitting next to him were cultivators who had come to take the mercenary assessment. At this moment, they were all looking at Du Fan with curiosity and sizing him up. Some people thought that he was a descendant of an aristocratic family. Some people felt that he was an elegant young master. There were also people who felt that this was a person who had been in a high position for a long time. Some people even thought that he was just a gigolo. Inside, the woman at the counter took the folded paper and went in. Before she could meet the president, she was stopped by a manager. "Why are you not at the counter? Why are you here?" The manager said unhappily. "Hello, Manager Lin." The woman bowed and said, "There is a young master outside who asked me to pass this paper to the president." Chapter 4161. You don't even know who the other party is and you want to take his things to the president? If anything happens, can you bear the responsibility? The manager shouted sternly. Looking at the woman with her head lowered, he asked, "Where's the thing?" "It's just a piece of paper. Moreover, it's the pen and paper I gave him. There's only words on it, nothing else." The woman whispered. "Give it to me," the manager said and stretched out his hand. The woman hesitated for a moment, then bit her lip and shook her head. "No, that young master said I can only give it to the president." "Give it to the president? Does he know the president? Do you know why he's doing this? What if something bad happens when you casually give something unknown to the president? But this is just a piece of paper with words on it." The woman whispered. Because she was a relative of the president, she was not afraid of this manager. "Take it out." The manager shouted again, his anger obvious. What's with the noise? An old man walked out and looked at the two people outside. He frowned, what are the two of you arguing about? Third elder, is the president here? The woman asked and quickly walked forward. The president is discussing something with us elders. What do you want? The old man asked, his gaze falling on the woman. There's a young master outside who wants me to give this to the president. The woman said and took out the piece of paper. Give it to me. The elder stretched out his hand and gestured for her to take it, but who knew that she would take a step back? He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and stare at her. What are you doing? Isn't it just a piece of paper? He wants you to give it to me, I'll take it in for you, all right? The woman thought of that elegant young master, thought of how he looked at her with a smile and told her that she could only give it to the president personally and not peek. She clenched the piece of paper in her hand and said, that young master said I can only give it to the president personally. She knew she shouldn't, but she didn't know why, but when she thought of that young master's smiling eyes, her mind was in a mess. She only felt that since that young master trusted her so much, she should do it well. When the old man saw this, he took a deep breath and cursed under his breath, blockhead. He walked inside and saw that she was still standing there. He immediately shouted, come with this old man. Yes. The woman smiled happily and hurriedly followed him in. Inside, the president was discussing something with several elders. When they saw the third elder bring in a little girl, they couldn't help but be startled. They looked at each other and asked, what's wrong? Humph. Let this little girl speak for herself. The third elder lightly snorted. He flicked his sleeves, walked to his seat, and sat down. Then, he picked up his teacup and took a sip. President, there's a young master outside who wants me to give you a note. The woman revealed a joyful smile as she stepped forward and handed the note to him before standing to the side. Hearing this, the president was slightly surprised. After glancing at the woman, he opened the note and read it. When he read it, his expression changed slightly and he stood up from his seat. Where is that young master now? The president asked anxiously. Not knowing why the president had such a look on his face, the woman hurriedly replied, that young master is waiting outside. Quickly invite him in. As he spoke, he felt that it was inappropriate and said, there's no need for me. I'll personally invite him in. As he spoke, he was about to walk out when he was pulled back by one of the elders. Chapter 4162. We'll talk later. As the president spoke, he walked out quickly. Du Fan sat outside until he saw the lady walking quickly with an old man. Only then did he stand up. Young master, this is our president. As the lady spoke, she wanted to tell the president that she was talking about this young master, but the president pushed her aside. Young master, let's talk inside. The president gestured for him to enter. All right. Du Fan nodded slightly and smiled at the lady, thank you, young lady. As he spoke, he walked in. The lady's face turned red, as if she was in love. She walked back to the counter and sat down in a daze. Inside, in the hall, a few elders had not left. When they saw the president return with a young master holding a fan, they were startled and looked at each other. Why are you all still here? Let's disperse for now. The president was slightly stunned when he saw them, and had them leave first. Hearing this, the elders stood up. They wanted to ask, but when they saw the president's expression, they did not ask. They only said, then we'll leave first. We'll talk about what happened just now later. As they spoke, they left. After inviting Du Fan to sit down and serving tea, the servants left. Only the president and Du Fan were left in the hall. At this moment, Du Fan spoke, sorry to disturb you. No. As the president spoke, he looked at him and took out the piece of paper and asked, young master, the words Master of Heaven and Earth are written on this. What do they mean? In fact, he had a guess in his heart, but he wanted to confirm it. Du Fan smiled and said, I haven't introduced myself. My surname is Du, and my name is Fan. My master is the ghost Dr. Fengjiu. The current master of heaven and earth is Qi Kong, one of the 8 great phoenix guards under my master. Hearing these words, the president's heart thumped wildly. The hand that was holding the teacup trembled slightly. He hurriedly drank a mouthful of tea to calm himself down. Then, he placed the teacup down and took a deep breath before asking, I wonder what young Master Du is here for. President, there's no need to panic. I'm here today to ask you about something. Du Fan smiled and spoke gently. The president's anxious heart gradually relaxed. I see. Then what does young Master Du want to ask about? As long as I know, I'll tell you everything. He hurriedly said. I'd like to ask if you've heard of any news about the ancient nine-tailed fox since you're close to the Azure Demon Forest and the mercenary guild is in contact with the Azure Demon Forest more often. Hearing this, the president was startled. Ancient nine-tailed fox. He paused for a moment and said, I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. The mercenaries of the guild will also go on missions into the Azure Demon Forest. However, the ancient nine-tailed fox's hiding place must be in the depths of the Azure Demon Forest. It's the most dangerous place. Ordinary people can't go to that place. Therefore, we've only heard of the ancient nine-tailed fox appearing in the Azure Demon Forest. However, we don't know where it appeared and whether it's still there. Chapter 4163. Hearing this, Du Fan was deep in thought. The Wang family, one of the 8 great families in the city. Yes, if young master wants to know about the ancient nine-tailed fox, you can ask the Wang family. Du Fan nodded and said, I understand. He stood up and said, sorry for disturbing you today. No, it's my fault for not being able to help young master, I'm really sorry. The guild master quickly said. Du Fan smiled and said, I accompanied my master here, my identity is a secret, I hope the guild master can keep it a secret, in case it causes too much commotion. Yes, I know this, I will not reveal any information. He quickly promised. If that's the case, I'll take my leave first. He cupped his hands and bowed, then turned and walked out. I'll see young master out. As he said this, he quickly followed and saw him off. After seeing Du Fan leave, the guild master returned to the inner hall. When he returned, he saw a few elders waiting for him in the hall. He asked, sit. Let's talk about what happened earlier. Hearing this, the elders looked at each other. One of them said, Guild master, who is that young master? What did he come here for? He is an old friend of mine, this time he passed by and came to see me. The guild master did not say much, he looked at the few of them and said, about the mercenary assessment, do you have any other opinions? Seeing that he did not say much, the few of them did not ask any more, but, they did not believe the guild master's words. On the other side, Fengjiu walked around, bought some things, and went to the appointed tea house to sit, while looking at the various people on the street. Looking at one of the stalls, a woman was selling things, behind her sat a child of about 3 years old. The child was holding a ball in his hand, and it rolled down the street. The child stood up and chased after the ball. When the woman saw this, she called out to the child, telling him not to run too far, and continued to buy things. At this time, the street in front of them was filled with panic and chaos. He saw a ferocious beast with red eyes running out of nowhere. It was an adult wind wolf. It was extremely fast, and its body was injured. As it ran, the things on the street were flattened and messed up. Some cultivators couldn't react in time and fell to the ground in fright. They watched as Hui Lang dashed towards them with several men in black chasing after him. On the street in front of them, the child was standing there with a ball in his hand, staring blankly. oblivious to the approaching danger. Just as she was about to rush out, she saw a cultivator leap forward and grab the child before rolling away. However, as he carried the child away from the wind wolf, he was heavily stepped on by a man in black robes. Amidst the chaotic noise, she could faintly hear a muffled groan from the cultivator. Due to the wind wolf's extreme speed, the black-robed cultivators were unable to catch up. One of them immediately raised his hand to reveal the sleeve arrow on his arm, but was pulled back by the person beside him. "There are too many people on the street, we can't shoot. If we don't shoot, it will run away. Its speed is too fast, we won't be able to catch up. Let's catch it first," that person said, ignoring the person beside him. The sleeve arrow in his hand shot out. Chapter 41-64. Ah! He cried out in pain and retreated a few steps before falling to the side. Seeing the hidden arrow in his shoulder, his face immediately turned pale. Whoosh! The man in black didn't stop there. Instead, he shot out a second sleeve arrow. This time, the sleeve arrow shot into the wind wolf's back arm. With a howl, the wind wolf ran even faster. Whoosh! The hidden arrow shot out again, but the wind wolf dodged it. As soon as the wind wolf dodged, the old man behind it immediately turned pale and froze in place as he watched the hidden arrow fly towards his forehead. Fengjiu's expression became cold. She originally wanted to act, but when she saw Ling Shuang appear beside the old man, she calmly watched. Clang! The long sword blocked the hidden arrow. Before the hidden arrow fell to the ground, Ling Shuang swatted it with his sword and attacked the person who shot the hidden arrow. The other person was rushing forward and didn't expect the hidden arrow to return. For a moment, he couldn't dodge and could only watch as the hidden arrow sank into his arm. Immediately, he raised his hand and was about to release a fourth hidden arrow when he sucked in a cold breath and dropped his arm in pain. Awoo! In front of them, the wildly running wind wolf collapsed in a pool of blood. In front of the wind wolf stood Du Fan with a folding fan in his hand. He glanced at the twitching wind wolf on the ground and then looked forward. He saw Ling Shuang and Yi Feifei, as well as his master sitting in a nearby tea house. He walked forward and came to Ling Shuang and Yi Feifei's side, asking, "Are you all right?" "We're fine," the two replied. Yi Feifei looked at him and said with some surprise, "Big brother Du, why are you here?" "I walked around the city and thought I'd come here to take a look. I didn't expect to run into an out-of-control wind wolf," he said simply and gestured. "Master is in front. Let's go." "Yes." The two of them replied and followed him forward. However, they had only taken a few steps when they were stopped by a few cultivators in black robes. "What are you doing?" Du Fan asked, looking at them. "You hurt me." The cultivator with the injured arm didn't look at Du Fan. Instead, he stared at Ling Shuang with cold eyes. "Which eye of yours saw it?" Yi Feifei snorted and looked at that person. "I only saw you using a sleeve arrow to hurt people. You're courting death." That person shouted darkly as he raised his hand to slap Yi Feifei's face. Seeing this, Du Fan's eyes flashed with coldness. He pulled Yi Feifei behind him with one hand and lifted his leg to kick Du Fan, sending him flying more than 10 meters away. Cha-cha-cha-cha that person was kicked back, but he didn't fly off the ground. Instead, his body rubbed against the ground. Because of the force of the kick, after a few meters, a bloody mark was left on the ground. Hiss! That person screamed in pain. He felt a burning sensation on his back and the pain was unbearable. Several cultivators in black robes were shocked. Two of them quickly went over to help him up. When they looked at him, they saw that the clothes on his back had been torn, revealing a blood-stained back. It was a ghastly sight. Pfft! That person was helped up, but he couldn't even stand. He spat out a mouthful of blood, which splattered all over the ground. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end, he couldn't take it and fainted. Chapter 4165. To the side, Leng Shuang said indifferently, Du Fan's kick, even if he doesn't die, he'll be crippled. That kick didn't just injure his back, it also injured his internal organs. If he didn't have the best medicine to treat it, he would be crippled. The fan in Du Fan's hand opened with a schwa sound. He gently fanned himself and said helplessly, I didn't want to be so violent. It's just that this person is courting death. He can't blame me. As he spoke, he strode forward. I don't know who these people are, but they're too arrogant. They used a hidden arrow in front of so many people. As Yi Feifei said this, she saw that one of the cultivators still had a hidden arrow in his shoulder. She quickly walked forward. I'll help you pull it out. This. No need. That person's face was pale, as if he was frightened. Or perhaps it was because he saw the power of Du Fan's kick, but when he saw the girl come forward to help him pull out the hidden arrow, the man holding the fan glanced at him, and he suddenly felt panic and fear. Why don't you go to the clinic and get someone to help you pull out the arrow, clean up the wound, and bandage it? Yi Feifei saw the fear on the other's face and didn't force him. He only told him to hurry to the clinic. Yes, thank you, Mississippi. That person quickly got up and went to the clinic. As for the men in black, they had already taken the corpse of the Wind Wolf and its unconscious comrade and quickly left. The three people arrived at Fengjiu's place and called out, Master. Fengjiu's gaze fell on the cultivator who couldn't stand up after returning the child to the woman. She said to Du Fan, take that person to the clinic. Just go back to the inn later. Du Fan was slightly startled. He followed her gaze and saw a cultivator slowly moving to the corner with a painful expression. He responded, yes. As he spoke, he walked out. Master, look, I bought a pet. Yi Feifei took out the little spirit mouse from his bosom and put it on the table. Fengjiu glanced at it and raised her eyebrows slightly. This is not an ordinary spirit mouse. She looked at her and asked, where did you buy it? Hearing his master say that it was not an ordinary spirit mouse, Yi Feifei was very happy and said, I bought it from a cultivator who was selling spirit pets. This little spirit mouse bit me, and I found that its intelligence was higher than ordinary spirit mice, so I bought it. Your spirit mouse has one gold and one blue eye. It looks like a treasure-hunting spirit mouse. Fengjiu smiled and glanced at the little spirit mouse that had curled up into a ball. She had an ancient aura around her, so the little spirit mouse did not dare to get close to her. Ah! Treasure-hunting spirit mouse. Does Master mean that this is a spirit mouse that can find treasures? Yi Feifei asked in surprise. When I go back, I'll look through the 100 Beast book and see if it's true. As she said this, her voice paused and she said with a smile, however, it's most likely correct. That's great. She couldn't hide her joy and smiled. Leng Shuang watched from the side and also revealed a smile. Speaking of which, Yi Feifei's luck seemed to have always been very good. Let's go. Let's return to the inn. She stood up and paid the bill before leaving with them to return to the inn. On the other side, the black-clothed cultivators who had returned to the Spirit Beast Arena reported the matter to their master. After that, they stood to the side and waited for their master's orders. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.